All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. Please have a seat. If you have a conversation you need to have, please have it in the foyer. Thank you. So I'm going to call to order this meeting of the West Hollywood Planning Commission. It is Thursday, August 15th. This is a regularly scheduled meeting. We're going to go ahead and move right into item 2, the Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to call Dan Morin to lead us in the pledge, if you are so willing. So if you're amenable. Oh, you pass. Okay. How about Craig Hodges? Would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay. Sam Borelli.
All right, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for most. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving into item 3, we have a special order of business this evening.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I was wondering if we could possibly table this into our next meeting and wanted advice from the city attorney if there was any reason in which we couldn't.
I think it's at the pleasure of the Planning Commission if you want to move the item to the next meeting.
Great. There's no motion button, but I just don't think personally, because council hasn't made a decision on at-larges, that we should be, as a body, 5 of us, only really deciding. A 7 decision, I think all of us should be deciding. And I just think since council meets on Monday, and I do believe it is on their agenda, we should just wait until our next meeting to do it.
Is that your motion?
Motion, then?
That is my motion. Request to motion
To
postpone the
elections that are-
election of chair and vice chair until our next
meeting.
regularly scheduled meeting, please.
Go to on the floor. All right, let's call the question.
And that passes unanimously. That'll be brought back on the next agenda for elections of chair and vice chair.
Thank you, and thank you for the public's patience. If there's anyone who did show up to see who would be next elected chair or vice chair, my sincere apologies, or our sincere apologies. You are stuck with me for one more meeting as chair. All right, okay, well, I wasn't prepared for that. 1 second. Moving right along. Okay, so we'll move into item 4. David, if you could lead us in roll call.
Thank you. Good evening. Commissioner Elchel? Here. Commissioner Bass? Here. Commissioner Buckner?
Here.
Commissioner Erickson?
Here.
Commissioner Huppengarner?
Present.
Vice Chair Carvalero?
Here.
Commissioner Chair Jones?
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 5 is approval of the agenda. Do I have any updates or corrections requested, or?
I would make a recommendation.
Sure.
Given that 2 of our members have to recuse themselves from the sunset item, that if we could move that to the end, they wouldn't have to come back for the unfinished business item.
You mean to move it until?
Essentially swap items 11C and 13A so that they, when they recuse themselves, they can
Sure. That
leave.
makes perfect sense. Are there any procedural issues with that? No?
No, that's
I guess
fine.
I'd also wonder how long that would take. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just curious. If there's no procedural issues, I'm inclined to support that. Is that your motion? We have a second. So again, just for public notice, so we would be moving item 11C, which is the sunset-specific plan amendment for billboard cleanup items, to the very end and moving item 13A, which is unfinished business, 948 and 954 North San Vicente Boulevard, up to our third public hearing, but item.
And the agenda is amended as approved.
Great, thank you. Item 6 is approval of the minutes for our meeting on August 1st, 2019.
I move approval.
Moved by Commissioner Buckner, seconded by Commissioner Bass. And the minutes for
Did I vote?
August 1st are approved.
Wait, does
Yeah.
Commissioner Erickson need to recuse because you weren't at the last meeting?
Yeah.
Or abstention from?
We're show it as an abstention.
Thank you. We're so addicted to those screens. All right. Moving on to public comment, item 7. David, do we have any public speakers at this time?
We have no public speakers.
All right. We're ready for many public speakers during our hearings. All right, item 8 is the director's report.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. John Kehoe, Director of Planning and Development Services. Just want to provide an update on items going to the City Council. So on the council agenda on Monday, item 3D is the zone text amendment regarding the definition of dwelling units. You may recall the discussion we had about long-term, the definition of long-term. So that item is now going to be on the City Council agenda on Monday. And I think we'll have a council meeting, a second council meeting, the September 16th council meeting. I just want to give a heads up, we'll have zone text amendments. There's some miscellaneous zone text items we had, I believe, at the last Planning Commission meeting that's going for that meeting. And then also the zone text amendment regarding projects that span commercial and residential zones. So that's also scheduled for September 16th.
September 16th. You said I was going to ask about that. Okay, great. Thank you.
Right. And then the only other thing I wanted to say is that with David DeGrazia leaving, Jennifer Alkire is going to be the acting planning manager for current and historic preservation planning. And then in the long-range planning division, with the departure of Bianca, even though Bianca's still here for this one last meeting, we're going to do a rotation, and the first person up for that one is going to be Rachel Diamond.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the director at this time? No. Well, item 9 is items from commissioners. I'm going to start to my right, which I almost never do. Commissioner Hoopengarner.
Yes, I'd just like to make a reminder for everybody that Sunday is Ciclavia. For those of you who ride bicycles, and even those of you who don't, Ciclavia is coming to West Hollywood and the Hollywoods, and Santa Monica Boulevard is going to be closed. And it's opened only to, I guess, dual-wheeled and no-powered vehicles. And if you've ever had an opportunity to ride Ciclavia, it's a lot of fun. Everyone gets out and you can see some amazing bicycles. And it'll be a fun day, and it's welcome to West Hollywood.
I believe there's some places where you can cross Santa Monica Boulevard. They were published, I forget where, but
Yes.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the Commission and the wonderful members of the public who reached out to me after last week's fun incident with my dog eating a pack of gum. That was unexpected, but I appreciate the love and support. Winnie is good as new and not minty fresh anymore. Additionally, I want to wish, still I think of her as a West Hollywood resident, Ivy Bottini, a happy 93rd.
Wow.
Third birthday today. She's in Florida, so Ivy, I'm sure she might watch in some way, shape, or form. So I want to wish her a happy birthday. And then I also want to congratulate you, Jennifer. I think that's you were so great to me when I started as an intern at City Hall, and I'm so glad to see you as manager now. And I appreciate all the work that you'll do for us.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Caballero, anything?
Bianca, it's been wonderful working with you. I'm sorry to see you leave. And Jennifer, congratulations. I look forward to your new position and working with you in the future.
Commissioner Altschul?
I'll save my thanks and laudits for Stacy until September 5th. However, I want to congratulate Jennifer on being acting manager. I think that's wonderful. I knew you when you went by another name. Before you got married, you've been here for years, and I think it's a wonderful appointment. Also, speaking of birthdays, next Friday is Jean Dobrin's 99th birthday. Wow. She's presently in the hospital, but it doesn't seem to be life-threatening.
Thank you. Commissioner Bass?
I would like to congratulate Commissioner Erickson and everyone involved in the Mueller report this last weekend. I participated as a reader, and I think that it was fantastic that he spent so much energy and his team spent so much energy in highlighting that important document right here in this room. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Buckner?
Everybody's saying all these wonderful things to all of you. I want to thank the public for being here, and I do want to congratulate Jennifer and say goodbye to Antonio. And, excuse me, not Antonio, what am I talking about? Sorry.
You know something we don't?
I'm looking at Antonio and saying that. Are you still here, Antonio? Good, okay. I'm sorry about that. I'm looking forward to the shakeup in our department. I know it's all going to work out. Everybody's going to step up, and we're going to be able to do some good work, and I look forward to that. And I'm going to save my sadness about Stacy until next time.
It's not like I'm dying, everybody.
I know, but you've done such a good job.
Thank you. Like maybe it should feel that way to some people. I hope that it doesn't, but thank you. So I'm gonna, Sue, do you have anything else? Commissioner Buckner, are you good? Okay, I also just want to echo my my fellow, thank you to Commissioner Huber for the reminder about Ciclavia. My bike got stolen out of my old West Hollywood garage, so I guess I don't have one to ride. But thank you for the reminder about that. I just want to echo my colleagues' sentiments. I think I mentioned this at our last meeting, but obviously miss David and wish him all the best in his future endeavors. And also, Bianca, maybe we'll run into each other at our neighborhood Whole Foods in the future. But we've very much enjoyed working with you and wish you all of the best. And congrats also to Commissioner Erickson. It looked pretty intense, so the Mueller report reading. So I'm glad you survived and that Winnie is all well. All right. Unless anyone has anything else, I'm going to move on to item 10, which is our consent calendar. We have none, and with that, we will slide into our public hearings, the first of which is item 11A, 645 to 681 North Robertson Boulevard and 648 to 654 North Lapeer Drive, the project also known as Robertson Lane Hotel Project.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners and Chair Jones. Thank you for the kind words. Appreciate it. This item, as you mentioned, is a request for changes to an approved project located at 645 Robertson Boulevard and 645 to 681 Robertson Boulevard and 648 to 654 Lapeer Drive. It's known as the Robertson Lane Project. The project was approved in June of last year, and it generally consisted of about 258,042 square feet of development overall, 241 hotel rooms, retail, restaurant, and design showroom areas associated with the hotel development, about 10,000 square feet of ballroom and meeting space broken up into 2 main meeting spaces and pre-function areas, a 2,500 square foot nightclub, and a maximum height of 9 stories and 113 feet for the tallest portions of the building. Notably, the project also included the relocation and rehabilitation of portions of the factory building, which is a historic building located on the site. It's currently located spanning between Robertson and Lapeer Street Drive, sorry, and it will be relocated along Robertson Boulevard. And finally, the approved project includes a pedestrian paseo through the project from Robertson to Lapeer, known as the Robertson Lane. Earlier this year, the applicant approached the city with some changes to the project. These generally included 4 fewer guest rooms, so now we're going down to 237. Slight reductions in overall square footage, which the details are in the written staff report. I don't need to go through all of the numbers here. Reconfiguration of some of the uses on site, notably the ballroom was moved to the Robertson side, and the guest rooms that were behind the factory building were moved into the towers, so that creates a lot of efficiencies for the guest rooms to all be located together and for the ballroom to be located in a space where it doesn't need to have as many structural columns and can be a larger, more useful ballroom and meeting space, which is what the city really needs in this area. There was a substantial area increase in the factory building. So where previously there were 7 out of 12 20-foot-long modules of the building being preserved and rehabilitated, now there will be 11 out of the 12, and it will be substantially longer along Robertson Boulevard. And there were revisions to the materials and methods of construction that I'll get into in detail in a minute, and changes to the Lapeer frontage and hotel entry, which I will also get into in detail. So many of the requested changes, I'm going to start with the ones that were stemming from one particular change, is that they are including the removal of 2 buildings on the site that were previously to remain. These were always part of the specific plan area. These were always part of the project site and the FAR calculations and all of that. They were just to be remaining, and now they're going to remove these buildings. They were evaluated in the EIR and also in the addendum as to their historical significance and found not to be eligible for listing. And what this did was it opened up a lot of different opportunities for efficiency on the site. So starting underneath, now this area of the site can be excavated, which allows the subterranean parking areas to be expanded, so fewer levels need to be dug out, and it reduces, not substantially, but reduces the export and excavation out of the site. In addition, it also means that the driveways can be relocated on the Robertson side to to the north and south ends of the property. And what this does is it adds to the pedestrian orientation of that stretch of Robertson, where there's no longer a driveway bisecting the factory building and bisecting the site. Now pedestrians can walk between the entire length of the project without encountering vehicle intrusion. In addition, this led to the ballroom changes. It led to a lot of other reconfigurations within the site that is detailed in the table in the written staff report, where it goes through the different square footages that have changed. So this is an image of the approved project, and you can see where the factory building is along Robertson, and then the 2 white structures to the left of it are the building with the kind of rooftop ductwork here. Those are the buildings that will be removed, and this is the new rendering of that same view. You can see that the factory building is substantially larger, and that the site is significantly more efficient. It makes a lot more sense this way. So that was and one more view. Whoops. One more view of the factory building and how much it is improved to not have that driveway through it and to be able to have a substantially added length. So the next major change that was requested had to do with the skin of the building. In 2018, the approved design included a basket weave configuration on the main hotel facade using glass that canted at an angle. So this is in this portion of the hotel area. And the materials were bronze anodized aluminum frames and limestone veneer, but a lot of glass. And here's another view of the approved design from the lane, and this is the area I'm talking about. This was the concept that they came in with. Structural engineering issues came up as they got ready for plan check, and structural components needed to be added, and so they ended up with a lot more solid space than there was to begin with. And they treated that with more of the stone veneer, which is a nice material, but what it did was it ended up flattening the facade and significantly reducing the interest. It was harder to read the basket weave, and it wasn't reading with the same design intent. So, as you know, the item was continued from July. One of the comments that came from the design review subcommittee and that came from staff was that this piece needed to be worked out. What they did was they used that time to explore other design and construction methods, and they were able to come up with a curtain wall system that regains that basket weave approach. It reintroduces the lightness and the elegance to the facade, and really goes back to the original design intent that the skin conveyed originally in the approval. And another change was the Lapeer entry. So this is the approved design. The Lapeer entry was a vehicular turnaround where the valet and drop-off areas were located. The hotel entrance was set back from the street, and there were vehicles between the sidewalk and the entrance to the building. That said, it was very large and open. It had this grand, expansive opening to the lane, and it had this large cantilevered piece. These were the major design moves on this side of the project. So as the project was being engineered again, it became apparent that the span that was originally intended here would require some serious columns that would kind of negate this open space, or substantial structural components across this span, which significantly lowered the height here, and the clear open height made a big difference in the entry to the lane. This was another issue that Design Review Subcommittee and staff brought forward in the July version that we wanted them to work on. So what they were able to do in that interim was to find a compromise position where they're asking for a modification to the height, so they're asking to add 6 feet 6 inches to the height of that structure, which is within the 10% modification area. It's a 6% modification. That will account for the structural girder that needs to go across. So it's almost identical open height with all the structure and soffits and everything in there. So this significantly regains what we needed in that openness here. Similarly, they've added this piece back in here that's kind of a floating box. It sort of regains some of that design intent with the cantilever in the approved design. I think the biggest thing to say about the change on this site is that it is extremely more pedestrian friendly. That's really bad wording, but it's a lot more pedestrian friendly because you don't have that vehicle intrusion through the site. You don't have the vehicle drop off here. You've got an entrance to the hotel right off the corner of the lane. You've got the entrance to the lane, and then you've got the cars at either end, similar to the Robertson side. So you've got that transparency. You've got the activity right on Lapeer, where we prefer it. All right, so I've talked a lot about everything, I've given you highlights of what's changed. So let's go through what hasn't changed, because I think that's also important to keep in mind, the things that are staying the same and that they're not trying to touch, just to reiterate. So the first one is the lane. The lane's staying largely the same. The only change is that the fire department requirements for fire lane access restrict what they can put in the first 40 feet on either end. So they're working through what they can do and what they can't do with the fire department, but they won't be able to have fixed seating or anything in that area. But essentially, the width of the lane, the open to the sky, the path, the complete access between Robertson and Lapeer, all of that stays the same. The lane isn't changing, and the location of it. The overall uses on the site aren't changing. It's a hotel, it's got restaurant, it's got nightclub, it's got ballroom, it's got design showroom and retail. The Robertson Lane specific plan is not changing. They're not asking for any changes to the code. They're not opening any legislative items with this. The number of parking spaces being built is not changing. So that stems from the one right before it. The Robertson Lane specific plan specifies how many parking spaces need to be built on this project, and they are building 750 parking spaces. The difference that was discussed in the staff report is what is required under the new parking ratios. And what that does is it opens up, the intent of those new parking ratios was that, part of the intent was that businesses that had surplus parking but couldn't allow other businesses to use it because it was their required parking, even if it wasn't being used. So similar to other hotels, other places in the city, other uses, other places in the city, they will now have more non-required parking, and that is consistent with our intent to sort of have that surplus stash of parking available to other businesses in the area. The overall design concepts and massing, as I talked about, are not significantly changing. The applicant has worked hard to keep them largely the same. And the overall environmental conclusions aren't changing. We had the same environmental consultant prepare an addendum to the EIR that was included in your packet, and it reaches the conclusion that none of the environmental impacts conclusions are changing. And the public benefits stay the same. All of the public benefits that they are required to give us, they will still give us. There is no increased delta in the project. They're not asking for more. Like I said, they're not changing the specific plan. So the calculus that gave us our public benefits target also has not changed. And so with that, I will conclude, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. So we have an opportunity now to ask staff questions about the staff report or about anything contained in the presentation. Does anyone have questions? Does
Answered mine.
anyone have questions? As regards what's in the staff report or Jennifer's presentation? Sure.
Jennifer, I'm just looking at page 3 on the staff report and regarding your parking comment question. Could you just, and I guess for me to better understand what you're saying, is regarding in number 12, even though it says there's 428 fewer spaces required by use, turn the page.
Turn the page. It's unfortunate pagination here, and I apologize for that because it makes it seem like this table concludes on page 3 with the 428 space reduction. But as you pointed out, if you turn the page, it says that there is no change in the parking being provided and built on the site.
Great. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thank you. It's a good question. Commissioner Bass? No? Anyone else? Sure.
Jennifer, in the EIR, there's a note for a museum space that commemorates Studio One, but I don't remember seeing a note that commemorates the camera production company that used to be there. Is that anywhere in the EIR? Did I miss it, or is that part of the conversation? Will that be included?
So yes, both of those aspects of the history of the building would be included in the mitigation measures pertaining to the commemoration. The details of those commemorations haven't been worked out yet. It's suggested that they'll use that mezzanine portion of the factory, but that hasn't been finalized at this point. That's something that happens a little bit later in the process and will be reviewed by staff and will be shown to the Historic Preservation Commission as well.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
I have a question on that then as well. So in regards to it going to HPC, I understand, but because of the fervor around Studio One, right, whatever, camera shop, whatever we're talking about, will there be public input required for what goes on for that commemoration? Because the public was very invested in that. I mean, many people were, but don't know if that's a condition or if that's part of the process, or if the process hasn't been worked out.
I don't remember off the top of my head if that's part of the process. I think that I can find that out for you.
Is this something the applicant would be able to answer?
Potentially, but also our CEQA consultant is here. They might be able to answer that too.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Yes, thanks, Jennifer. The lane. You mentioned that there's no change in the public benefit of the lane. Was the open space adjacent to the lane not considered part of that, the lane and the public benefit?
What open space adjacent to the lane?
There's about 8,000 square feet of open dining area that was in the original plan.
No, that wasn't part of the public benefit.
Okay. And can you go back to the pier side and the, yes, right there, perfect. When I look at the plans, that exit ramp right there on the bottom right corner of the image is the pickup zone for the valet. And it's also got a series of bike racks right there. And the sidewalk is right there. So I'm wondering the logistics of how that pickup zone, given 700 cars potentially coming through there, is going to be a valet pickup point and bike racks, and et cetera. I think it's on,
No, I see what you're saying. I'm just looking. Hang on 1 second. I will allow the applicant to talk about the logistics of how that circulation will work. As far as the bike racks, it looks like they are on the lane side of a wall there, so they would be separated from the outbound traffic.
I wasn't so much worried about the traffic as I was the people waiting for their cars and how much space there is for however many people are going to be picking up cars. Given that this is now a 100% valet building, is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay, whereas the previous iteration it was not?
This is something that we can look into more. I think it's a good comment, and we'll look into it in the parking operations plan and circulation plan that comes during the plan check phase.
Sorry, I just can't find it right now. Okay, and back to that parking. So it is now 100% valet for 750 spaces.
That's what's being proposed, yes.
Okay, so do we have a commensurate parking plan as to how that would work?
So the parking operations plan is a condition that they have to prepare later.
Okay, because I'm just worried about the logistics of how many people that involves, how much, there's a ton of, I mean, you've put 700 parking spaces in one level with all of the parking blocked by additional valet. And so I'm wondering just how that's physically going to work. Okay. That's it for the questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you. So before the applicant presents, we need to do disclosures. I'll start to my left. Commissioner Buckner? Did you say Buckner? Yeah.
Yes, I do have a disclosure. I did have a meeting with the applicant's representative, and we discussed matters that are contained in the staff report, in particular the changes that have been incorporated into the new design.
My disclosure is the exact same.
My disclosure is that I attended a meeting with some members of the city staff and members of the applicant's representation, with the subject matter being only the lane.
Thank you. I had a conference call with the applicant, and we discussed items contained in the staff report.
I had a meeting with the applicant and his staff, and we discussed items in the staff report and also focused on the design changes that had happened since design review.
I told the applicant I had no questions.
I have nothing to disclose.
Thank you. So we'll call the applicant up to the podium. You'll have 10 minutes to present. As a matter of course, and for public record, please do read your name and city of residence, or state it when you come up to the microphone.
Did we want to let Eric answer? I know he came to the table.
Sorry?
Eric from Dudek, you had asked a question of Dudek before, and he was going to answer, but
Oh, okay.
we can start if you'd like.
Eric Wilson, environmental consultant from Dudek. I think one of the questions asked related to commitments regarding interpretation and commemoration related to Mitchell Camera Factory. And there was a mitigation measure presented in the draft DIR that was carried forward into the addendum, which is included in your package. And mitigation measure call 5 is specifically related to interpretation and commemoration for the Mitchell.
Could you speak up? Sorry, I can't hear you.
I'll restart, sorry. So there's a mitigation measure included in the CEQA document that specifically relates to commemoration and interpretation for the Mitchell Camera Factory. That was originally included in the draft DIR and is carried forward into the CEQA addendum that's in your package now. Mitigation measure call 5 specifically is a measure that addresses that program. And a question was specifically asked about, would public input be provided and part of that measure specifically states that there'd be a public workshop to review that plan. So if you look at mitigation measure call 5, the answer will be provided there that indeed there is a interpretation related to the camera factory.
Thank you.
So if I could ask Ms. Alkire to pull our presentation up, and Madam Chair, if I may ask for 15 minutes for our presentation, we'll be quick. I don't think we'll need it all.
Do you think that, I mean, I'm really
We're
not inclined to
clocking
give
in at
extensions,
12.
especially not when I'm not asked in advance. I'm just saying it's just not fair to the other two other applicants. What you can do, if you feel it's necessary, is we can move some of your time from your rebuttal up into your presentation, but that's your call.
We'd like to retain our rebuttal time, so we'll move
Okay.
quickly then.
Thank you.
Still waiting for our presentation, I'm sorry.
David, can we just make sure
And
the
it's on
clock is at 10
the
minutes?
desktop of the stuff.
There we go.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Jacob Stevens. I'm a resident of the city of Los Angeles, and I lead the community engagement effort at Faring, your favorite homegrown West Hollywood retail developer. We are here today with Robertson Lane on behalf of the Alulian and the Adler families, legacy families that built West Hollywood, and legacy businesses. We want to reiterate our gratitude to this commission for your unanimous approval of this project a year ago. And as Jennifer explained, with some kind of reorganization on the site, we've been able to improve an outstanding project. So notably, we're extending the restored and rehabilitated factory building to 11 of 12 modules. The driveway has been removed from the Robertson frontage of the factory building. We've consolidated the parking. We have the larger ballroom that will be the trophy for all of West Hollywood events, and we've reduced the overall project square footage. I will introduce the team here that's worked with Craig Hodgetts, our original project architect, and our folks at HKS who have helped us with the construction drawings to lead you through a bit of comparison side by side of the approved and updated designs.
Hello, my name is Scott Hunter, representing Faring. I'm an architect with HKS Architects. I wanted to take a moment to run through some of the details through imagery. We have before and after images here. On the lower right, you can see the lengthened factory building that we discussed, representing 11 bays of the historic building versus the 7 bays that were initially proposed. You also may notice, it's maybe a little difficult to see in the lighting, that there is an expansive green roof in the center of the site, which represents the roof of the newly relocated 10,000 square foot ballroom, which will be, rather than the old design, which had multiple small ballroom spaces, now it's one large contiguous ballroom with a dedicated entry on Robertson Boulevard, which we feel is a far better strategy. This represents the before and after, essentially, of the lane itself, and some of the additional improvements to the lane that we've been able to solve is we've removed any steps in the lane, so now it's even a more pedestrian-friendly, accessible space for all the residents of West Hollywood. Another closer view here, looking north on Robertson, you can see by relocating the ballroom, we've actually reduced the bulk and mass of the building on the northern end of the site, where the retail reaches northward towards Santa Monica Boulevard. And we've actually brought a restaurant space with a nice trellis that faces out onto Robertson Boulevard. So we feel this is another enhancement to the design. On the south end of Robertson, you'll also see we've created, in the before and after, we've created a dedicated entry to the ballroom, which is accessible directly off the street. The ballroom is at grade, and it has its own distinct identity, which also, it really celebrates the factory building by making it a real marquee on the boulevard. As you look in the view, also there's a terrace that we've added over this ballroom entry, which is the commemoration space plaza, which has doors directly into the spaces we were discussing that are commemorating Studio One and the camera factory. So we think also that this is going to create a better experience addressing some of the traffic issues, because then the ballroom is on Robertson where peak demand is. We can deal with the valet situation along the property and not have it all on Lapeer. The This view also shows what was discussed about, we feel, the greatly enhanced pedestrian experience by removing a motor court along Lapeer and creating a far more focused pedestrian-friendly experience. There are some details that have been discussed about bicycle parking and separation of uses, and we feel we have a very strong plan to address all of that and make it work. Might not be readily apparent in all of the renderings because there's a lot of details that go into making that work with guardrails, et cetera, but we've done the analysis and feel very confident that it works. Another detail here that we can look at that highlights the retainage of the basket weave, and I have another view of that that'll show that in a little bit more detail, but I did want to zoom in a little bit and focus on the enhanced public celebration of the hotel lobby, that it really fronts directly onto the lane, and you don't have, as the upper view shows, an automobile entering a motor court with pedestrians. We've completely separated the two, and we feel it's going to be a far more friendly, safe, welcoming, and celebratory experience for guests of the hotel and the public who are walking down the lane. This gives you a little bit more detail of the experience of that lobby and some of the cantilevered feelings of the motion that was described by Jen in her report to you. And you start to see a little bit more of the detail of the basket weave on the facade and then grounded with very beautiful limestone material. So it's a very high quality material on the exterior of the building. And we feel that the modulation of the facade really carries the spirit of the design and has a very contemporary, beautiful feel to it. Another detail that wasn't really discussed in great length was the addition of, we've kind of wrapped the edges of the building with windows to lighten the mass along Santa Monica Boulevard, which is basically the end of the hotel, and an integration of a green wall element. And so we think this goes a long way towards modulating the mass, articulating it, and giving it visual interest. And so we think this is a great improvement to the design as well.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Jim Arnone, Land Use Council to Faring. As a preliminary matter, I'd like to make clear that no hotel operator has been selected for this project. Faring did issue an RFP. It went widely to all luxury hotel operators. They've interviewed virtually everybody, and no hotel operator has yet been selected, so there isn't yet a flag. I also wanted to comment on the question asked about the parking valet process. There will be multiple valet stations. There will be one on the Lapeer side, there'll be one on Robertson, there'll be one down in the garage. Our project's traffic engineer studied this and confirmed that we'll be able to accomplish the drop-offs and the pickups with just normal, typical wait times during rush periods. So we're very confident that the all-valet process will work. Wanted to note that you have before you a very thorough EIR addendum. It's a very lengthy, longer than you see for most EIR addendums, and it confirmed that just like the project you previously approved, this will continue to have no significant impacts that we haven't been able to mitigate to below the level of significance. We appreciate your design review subcommittee's comments. I think you can see that there has been a lot of revisions. We took everything to heart. We got a lot of input, and we responded to it. We appreciate the Historic Preservation Commission's unanimous recommendation. We very much welcome and are grateful for the support from the historic preservation community. With that, we respectfully ask that you approve the staff recommendation and approve this project so that this exciting future landmark can get going. Thank you very much.
Question?
Questions?
And deduct this from his time, please. Jim, you talked about the retrieval time. Do you have statistics on what the average retrieval time would be?
I don't, John. I wasn't anticipating it, so I didn't go and ask for that time. So I'm sorry, I don't have the specifics. I know that we wanted to be certain. I'm actually finished, but we wanted to be certain that it would work, of course, and with the multiple valet pickups and drop-offs, we'll be fine.
Thanks.
To be clear, does that conclude the applicant's presentation?
Yes.
Would you like to add the time onto your rebuttal?
Sure.
Okay.
I couldn't tell a timer, so I didn't know what I had.
Okay, that's still not fixed. I'm so sorry. Any other questions for the applicant at this time?
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yes, do you have renderings of the building from Santa Monica Boulevard? I see it from Robertson, I see it from Lapeer, but I've seen no renderings of the building from anywhere on Santa Monica Boulevard.
Was that in our package, Scott? Did we have one?
So, Commissioner, this was an existing, I'm sorry, Jake Stevens, City of Los Angeles. This was a rendering that was provided for City Council at a special request of a council member outside of the normal images we typically provide or are required to provide. Unfortunately, we weren't able to recreate these with drones and all of that at this point, so we do have a comparison of the approved design and the updated design of the north elevations here for you. So if you have specific questions, we can have the architecture team refer to these two elevations, Commissioner.
Yeah, I thank you. I saw the elevations. I was just looking for the renderings. You had renderings of everything else, but
Yeah,
not
we don't have one.
anything from Santa Monica. Okay, thank you.
We don't have one. That required extensive drone work that we did before.
Okay, thank you. That's it for now.
Thank you, Commissioners.
No other questions? All right. With that, we will move into public comment. How many speakers do we have, David? We have 18. Okay. I'm conflicted. 18. All right. Generally speaking, public comment is limited to 3 or 2 minutes at the discretion of the Chair, Planning Commission. Given the number of people who are here to speak tonight, I'd like to suggest that we give 2.5 minutes to each speaker as a happy medium. Again, if there's something that you would like to say, we always want to encourage public participation. We're incredibly grateful for your feedback and your time. We recognize that most of you have jobs just like us and that this is time out of your day. So we want and need you to be here in order to make a decision that we can feel good about for the community. That being said, you are also welcome to support staff's recommendation or oppose it by your name. So I want to encourage you to participate, but just to be as efficient and as fair as possible with everyone's time, recommend that if something that you'd like to say has been echoed by another person, you're welcome to just say that you support it or that you oppose it. And with that, we will call our first speaker up to the podium. Again, for the public record, please do, when you come up to the podium, state your name and city of residence. Sam Borelli, followed by Roy Oldenkamp. And again, just to preface that, if I'm mispronouncing your name, I'm just reading what's on the screen. Please correct me for the record.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Sam Borelli, resident, City of West Hollywood. I've long been a fan of Robertson Lane, really since its concept. It's well thought out, well designed, and well suited for this location. As I've said publicly, I was not in support of maintaining the building, now known as the factory. Sorry, Roy and Victor. But I'm happy to say that they proved me wrong, and now happier that the new design is even better. I love the way that they changed the hotel entry on Lapeer. It looks great from that location, better protecting pedestrians and improving the lane and the views of the factory from that side. I urge you, and I've long been an advocate for more conference and ballroom space. I can't wait to dance in the ballroom of Robertson Lane once it's finally open. I urge you to approve this beautiful project. Thank you.
Thank you. Roy Oldenkamp, followed by Mark Saltarelli.
Good evening, Roy Oldenkamp, City of West Hollywood, speaking on behalf of the West Hollywood Preservation Alliance. I'd just like to say that the changes and the amendments are beautiful and well done. We really enjoy the additional length on the project. That there are 11 panels instead of 7 out of the 12 is a significant change, and everybody I've spoken to in the preservation community is really jazzed about that. And also, we have enough panels left over, I believe, for the last Truscon panels to have enough to make the entire project to be rehabilitated correctly. So we're very pleased about that, as well as the parking changes and the southern facade as well. The changes with the ballroom are also very much appreciated, and the setbacks on the north side as well. So we heartily agree with the staff and like this project very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Saltarelli, followed by Scott Schmidt.
Hi, I'm Mark Saltarelli, City of Los Angeles. I'm a filmmaker, and I'm making a documentary about the history of Studio One in the backlot with Lloyd Coleman, who will be speaking later. I just wanted to extend my support for all of the changes with Fairing. Fairing has been good with us. We are actually going to be beginning in October 2 of our first production days in the building with them, and we appreciate their help in facilitating that. And I'll let Lloyd Coleman talk about the event that's going to happen as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The man behind the camera. Scott Schmidt, followed by Ron Hamill.
Hi, Scott Schmidt, resident of West Hollywood, here in support of the staff recommendation and the changes in the project. For me, this is really simple. Is what is proposed better than what was approved a year ago? If the answer is yes, then vote yes and move forward, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Hamill, followed by Lloyd Coleman.
My name is Ron Hamill. I'm from Studio City, and I used to work at the Studio One Backlot Theater from 1978 to the early 80s, middle 80s, late 80s, I don't remember. Anyway, but I used to work there. I love that building, and I like the changes. I like that new basket weave look, and I urge you to approve the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Lloyd Coleman, followed by Gary Steinborg.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lloyd Coleman. Thank you for hearing me this evening. I'm here to lend my support and urge you to come through with the final approval on this project. I've had three careers in my life, and two of them were in the city of West Hollywood. One was with the Ashkenazi Hotel Group, and the other was with the Studio One. And we produced a lot of the shows that were important to us all back in the 80s. So this is a great opportunity to make sure that history is written, or at least in our view, is written correctly. And with my partner in this project, Mark Saltarelli, and the others here with me, we're going to do our very best to do that. And I can't thank you enough. I truly mean this, for making this building stay in the presence of this city. It's meant so much to so many people through the years. It was a place of great joy, and it was a place where we shared a lot of sadness together with the whole community. Had it not been for the vision of Scott Forbes, and had it not been for the vision of Jason and his team at Pairing, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. So from the bottom, I'm here mostly to thank Pairing, and thank you for taking the time to go the extra mile to include everything the building needs to make it stand maybe into another 100 years, in the next centennial, and also around the city. I'm also saying thanks to you for the things that you're doing elsewhere in the city. You made quite a contribution. So I'm here to thank you, and please help us support it and get it through. Thanks.
Thank you. Gary Steinborg, followed by George Cradle.
Good evening. Gary Steinberg, resident of City of Los Angeles. I'm here to support this project. This building has a lot of history for me. When I came out, it was the first club I really went to. That was in the 70s. This was more than a community center or a bar. This was our temple, our church that we went to. It was where we gathered, and I've lost a lot of friends that I used to be here with. So this building means a lot to me. I worked with Lloyd Coleman. We produced entertainment in the mid-'80s, and I was also Scott Forbes' assistant for a while. I would like to see this building be something that's not this antiquated old building sitting there not being used. I would like to see something that memorializes what we had here and our memory and our history. That's what's important to me. Thank you.
Thank you. George Cradle, followed by Dan Moran.
George Cradle, City of West Hollywood. I'm going to end up going quickly through many of the things that I've mentioned before and offer my commendation. First of all, since my field is historic preservation, I'm really pleased that more of the building is being saved. Even if it's reoriented, which would not always be the best choice, it has really evolved into something very positive, and I think will be a focus for the whole project, as well as offering space for memorializing the studio and the camera factory, and really showing how much this building has contributed to the community and been a part of the community for quite some time. I'm very pleased with the changes to the exterior in terms of the basket weave. I think that solution is nice. I think it adds a lightness to a otherwise a rather large building. As far as the parking garage is concerned, I suppose reduction from 6 to 3 helps, and in the construction process might, to some small degree, mitigate all the trips hauling dirt and the length of time it will take to excavate that area, which is certainly to be wished for. I think on the Lapeer side, the entrance for the hotel still needs a little fine-tuning, but I approve of the changes. I think they're good, and I think the questions about the mixture of vehicles entering, leaving, and pedestrians and bicycles are probably well taken. The final thing, of course, is the ballroom, which has evolved into a much larger, more usable space. And I think that's wonderful, and I think that is something that we have lacked, at least in that part, or the part of West Hollywood in which we are now, as a matter of fact. So I think all told, the changes are positive, they're in the right direction, and I really hope you will approve the changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dan Moran, followed by Clifford Bell.
Dan Moran, 40-plus year resident of the city of West Hollywood. I first visited West Hollywood in 1977, and the following year, in 1978, I became a resident and have been ever since. I started going to Studio One in '77 when I first visited, and then became a regular patron afterwards. When I was the director of Volunteers of AIDS Project Los Angeles from 1983 to '89, I got to know Scott Forbes fairly well. He was very gracious to me to allow us to use a PLA, to use the backlot for events, to recognize volunteers at absolutely no charge. It was very gracious of him. As an avocation as a DJ, I really enjoyed Studio One very much, and I also patronized the factory. So my association with this venue runs obviously very deep. I think Farron Capital, Jason Alulian, has gone above and beyond what was originally designed. They've really improved the project, in my estimation. And so I hope that you will approve this project, because I think it is a testament to West Hollywood and the vision of Farron Capital and Jason Alulian to keep it as well intact as possible, to make it a true destination point for everyone in the city and those who visit West Hollywood. So from me, from someone who's been a longtime resident and a patron of this establishment, I hope that you, as the Planning Commission, will approve this to go before the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Clifford Bell, followed by Amanda Goodwin.
Hello, my name is Clifford Bell, and I'm a resident of Los Angeles, and I thank you for the opportunity to participate this way. It's so wonderful, first time I've ever done it. I'm grateful for, and I support this Robertson Lane because of my love for the backlot, my history with the backlot. It was 40 years ago next month that I moved to Los Angeles, and the first place that I came was the backlot. I am now a producer of entertainment. I'm one of the 3 or 4 most prominent producers of live nightclub entertainment, and everything I learned and everything I loved came from those early days at the backlot. And even though today we have several really fabulous venues, there's never been anything like what the backlot represented as sort of a mecca of entertainment and a doorway to Los Angeles as a young gay man. So I admire so much your efforts to preserve the LGBTQ history. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amanda Goodwin, followed by Genevieve Morrow.
Good evening, Amanda Goodwin, longtime resident of West Hollywood, 33 years. I'm going to date myself like a lot of the gentlemen before me. I've been shaking my groove thing in West Hollywood since the early 80s. and Studio One in the back lot being one of them. I remember in 1983 when Bud Cort invited a bunch of us to go to the back lot, Studio One, to talk about a new disease that was taking many gay men. And it's when I first learned about AIDS. And a lot of those men aren't here today that were there that night. And I think it is, I'm all about, in order to create history, you have to preserve history. So the fact that they want to keep more of this building and preserve it, I think is a beautiful memorial to so many men. And there were women that have sacrificed their lives that went before us, many of us. As far as the design, I think it's absolutely beautiful. I think keeping Robertson as a walking street and not using that as an ingress or egress is probably a great idea, but keeping the valet there. I like all the changes. I mean, I'm always impressed with Faring. I'm a longtime supporter of them. That's no secret, because they're thoughtful and they're innovative, and they are all about the detail, and they're all about working with the community and working with the city, and I think it's a great way to do business in this city. So I highly support this project and hope that you will pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. Genevieve Morrow, followed by Jennifer Gregg.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Genevieve Morrill, President and CEO of the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. Well, first of all, I just want to thank Bianca Siegel for all her hard work and being part of us. I'll see you downtown sometimes every Wednesday, Bianca, maybe. And congratulate Jennifer Alkire for this new promotion, so congratulations. I'm here in support. The Chamber's supporting Robertson Lane, Faring, the team, and Jason Alulian. What a great ride they're taking us on, the whole community. It's almost like they're taking us on a ride from the 20s through the 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way up through this new iteration. From the controversy of the factory history to the reiteration of its incorporation of this modular facility and to this latest and greatest improvement. Okay, that's my written speech, and here's my free flow. I was so excited to hear the architect say contiguous ballroom space. I mean, I don't know how many times you guys have heard me say it. I am ad nauseum saying contiguous space. We do not have it. The next ballroom space to open in West Hollywood, which is going to open the end of the month, is 204, can seat 240. We have got to find more. And it's not because I love events. It's because I'm the Chamber of Commerce, and I know that 26% of our workforce is hospitality. That's compared to 9% in Los Angeles, city of Los Angeles. 9% compared to 26% in 1.9 miles. It's needed, this event space. The demand is there. We flourish with it. The other thing that Faring understood is that we have to, if we're going to build another hotel, it better be competitive. It better be different. Not just the location, which is really significant, of having a location in the design district that's different than Sunset Boulevard. We need this. We need this space. Everything else is brilliant, but I'm telling you, I am focused on this ballroom space because we need it so badly. We need meeting space in this city. So I really hope that we support this because, and also, I just want to say something else about hotels and valet. Most hotels I go to are all valet. I've not been to many hotels where you park yourself. You always pull in a valet. So I really hope that you'll support this project in its entirety, the new design, and I'm very excited to get it built. So thank you.
Thank you, Genevieve. Jennifer Gregg, followed by David Reed.
Hi, good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Jennifer Gregg. I'm a resident of the City of Los Angeles. I'm also the Executive Director of the One Archives Foundation, where we make LGBTQ history visible. We've been working with Faring on the Robertson Lane project, specifically around sharing the authentic and accurate stories of LGBTQ history and experience within the factory space. Faring has been an incredible partner, assisting us with collecting the LGBTQ community's history from the factory, and I am so excited that they're providing a dedicated historical display area within Robertson Lane. I strongly support this project, and I encourage you to support the project as well. Thank you.
Thank you. David Reed, followed by Chad Bluen.
David Reed, City of Los Angeles. Our property line is the city limits of West Hollywood on the west side. This is a fabulous project for the city. And while we've been talking a lot about the history, we need to look at what it's doing for the future. The Pacific Design Center is a spectacular world-renowned building, despite what's inside, outside. It's something people come to see. The park that they're going to finish at some point here is going to be world-class. It's time we put the crown jewel of this whole area right where this project is, and that's what this will be. It's a beautiful project. It respects history. It's going to provide the best view of downtown LA with the PDC and the park. It'll be the most photographed spot in the city. This is something the city needs. It will be revenue for the city, being more hotel rooms. It deserves your support, hopefully unanimous support going to this council.
Thank you. Chad Bluen, again, please correct my pronunciation if I'm not saying it right, followed by Maraldo Vavalia. Chad? No? All right. Maraldo Vavalia?
Good evening, commissioners. That might be me, Marcello Vavala. That's fine.
I promise that's exactly how it read on my screen.
That's fine. So we're in support of staff's recommendation. And this project has come quite far since its first inception. We're thrilled that the factory building is having even more of it retained. It's a great resource, of course, for the city of West Hollywood, and this project will meaningfully adapt it for a new use. So again, we encourage you to approve the project. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It looks like Gary Steinberg, there's another request to speak, but I believe he already spoke, and you're only allowed to speak once, so, okay.
The following chose not to speak. They just wanted their view read into the record in support of staff's recommendation. Victor Olmachenko.
Great, thank you. We'll now have the applicant's rebuttal. David, can you just state for the record how much time, is it 7.5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
We don't have any rebuttal. We thank you very much for your time this evening, and we hope you'll approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. See, you didn't need those 15 minutes, Mr. Stevens. All right, so I'm going to close the public comment portion of the hearing, and we will move into deliberation.
I did have 2 more questions for the architect.
Oh, sure.
So I noticed that the gym is now 5 times bigger than the original plans. Is there a plan to use that as a public gym, or is that purely for the hotel guests?
It is not a public gym.
Okay. I'm just curious because of all of the design issues that were outlined in the staff plan. I noticed that the mechanicals they tripled in size for the same square footage. So I'm curious as to what drove that.
Well, I think the design has progressed, and we know more now about the actual criteria. It's a natural progression of the design process. As you learn more about all the criteria, things grow. You try to do your best to plan at the initial stages, but we've done a really good job of screening all the equipment and having it in locations that will not have a visible impact. But there's a lot of mechanical spaces in the lower level garages, et cetera.
Yeah, I saw that. I was just curious as to how there was such a dramatic change in the amount of mechanical for a project that didn't change in size at all.
Right. I think where we are now is where we feel the appropriate required space for mechanical is. So I think it's just part of the progression of the design.
Okay. And last but not least, I see a very large lobby on the Lapeer side that doesn't seem to have any use other than a very large space. Is it anticipated that that space would somehow accommodate additional bar space, restaurant space, any other public function space?
Well, we don't, as we mentioned, we don't have a hotel operator yet defined. So some of that interior design component may affect what happens in the lobby space, but it's an appropriately scaled lobby for a hotel of this size, lounge spaces, et cetera.
And last but not least, can you please, without getting into all of the structural supports and all the beams and all of that, help me understand why it was necessary to remove all of the open space along the Paseo for structural reasons.
And I believe you're referring to the areas adjacent to the lane along
South
Lapeer.
side, the huge triangle cutouts that were public patios and restaurants.
Oh.
So it was all open air. There's about 8,000 square feet that was along the Paseo that made that Paseo very open. And I'm just wondering structurally what required you to remove that?
Right. Well, it's a big challenge actually creating a portal like this. And so as we've been developing with our structural engineers, evaluating what it actually takes to achieve it from a structural perspective, we've gone through a very detailed evaluation of that. And we've come to a solution that we feel really captures the power and beauty of that portal. And there's a lot of criteria that go into the actual programming and planning of that. And we've made some adjustments as well to chamfer and cut corners back as well. I think the kind of the repositioning of the Lapeer entry by removing of the motor court caused kind of allowed us to reevaluate the functionality and the flow of some of the spaces. So we feel like we have a lot of public amenity, public spaces available to pedestrians on the street. Again, I would say it's kind of a progression as we get into more granular layer of detailed design.
But there wasn't a structural driver on that. It was
There
just
was,
it was
yeah,
just a program change.
No, it was a structural, as we were kind of evaluating how to span across effectively and where the best location for columns to come down.
Interior space?
No, on the
Lapeer side.
portal. I'm
Not
sorry.
on the Lapeer side. I'm talking about the interior space.
Can you be more specific then? Sorry.
On your original plans, page,
So I think that part was about program changing and what we're trying to do. But that was program changing.
L102, all of the open space here, all of this big triangle, and then this big triangle with all of the pergola over the top of it. All of these, this southern area was all open alongside the Paseo.
Oh, that's-
all
that-
of that has been removed at this point.
Can you tell me what the drawing there? That's actually a rooftop. Those are rooftop.
1.02 on the original plan, on the approved plans.
Commissioner Jake Stevens, City of Los Angeles. So yes, correct. So interior to that space, it was a rooftop terrace and dining. So we've maintained the ground floor dining area that's at the north end of the factory. Those enclosed spaces became the ballroom now, that terrace. And we were able to maintain outdoor dining on a second level terrace north of the lane opening, directly on Robertson, in efforts to continue driving activity, pedestrian focus, and all of that kind of good stuff around the lane at both ends.
So the dining is now on the roof, but there's nothing at the street level.
There's still street level, a coffee patio at the north end of the factory building, and let Jim answer.
So what you're looking at, that was rooftop dining.
The drawing you're referring to was the second level roof. So those open spaces were not on the lane level. They were up one floor above the lane.
Okay.
There was always rooftop dining, correct?
Excuse me?
There was always rooftop dining.
There was always,
Yes.
yeah, there was always
Yeah, and there
rooftop
still
dining.
and there still is. Yes.
I'm just talking about, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the architect or the applicant at this time?
I do.
Go ahead, Commissioner Caballero. Sorry.
Yep. Just a quick question. In the approval, the presentation a year ago where we had approval, there was a lot of comment about the big blank walls facing Santa Monica Boulevard, and I see that you covered them with a green wall, and you've also done that on both the north and the south elevation. They're huge green walls. I like the idea, the feasibility of these green walls and green roofs, and something that I hadn't seen that in the other plan, and in going through the packet over the last week, that just was highlighted to me.
Right.
If these gigantic green walls don't work, have you thought of a backup plan?
We've used them in the past on other high rises of even taller heights. So we have some examples in San Francisco that we've just finished, which is a much harsher climate than Los Angeles. I mean, and West Hollywood. They're a very integrated system, fully irrigated. They require a little bit of maintenance. We just finished one on La Cienega Boulevard at the juncture of Fairfax. Welcome you to go down and take a look at that. There's other examples. If you look at Westfield Century City, they have a really tall green wall as well. So the technology for that, it's something that requires maintenance. It's one of those things, if a plant doesn't make it, you replace the plant. It's a pocket system. So
Understood. Yep.
So it's a proven technology that we're very comfortable with.
So you feel comfortable that it'll be successful?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great.
Commissioner Erickson, did you have a question?
Yeah, I cannot remember, but was there a public benefit for your hotel screening room? For your hotel, the screening room that's on page L1.02? What's the public benefit for that again? And who can use it?
So I'm doing it from memory here, but I think all of the public benefits that were quantified and included in the package, I think none of them involved any of that operational space. I think everything was just funding and alternative sources of funding in the public parking, so there was no public benefit attributed to that.
Mm-hmm. To piggyback off of Commissioner Hoopengarner's comment, why did your gym increase so much? I mean, I go to hotels all the time, and I mean, it probably shows I don't ever use the gym, and it seems like I mean, I really don't. But I'm curious about why such a drastic increase in a gym size. I mean, I know you haven't chosen your hotel operator, but is your hotel operator in some way, shape, or form connected, have a fitness motto? What's the situation?
No, there's nobody who's selected, and what the architects were doing is they were fine-tuning it as we were looking at the space, and we were seeing that being able to have a significant place where people can go and work out and enjoy it was going to be an amenity that would help draw attention and activity.
To just your hotel guests, though?
Pardon me?
To just your hotel
Yes,
guests?
it's not open to the public, yeah.
I don't see that happening, but that's okay. So.
And Mr. Ross doesn't own it.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Thank you. Don't go too far. We may have more questions, but for now, it looks like we're good. So we can move into deliberation now. I'm not going to pick any. Commissioner Altshull.
There's absolutely nothing in this request for changes that I can see that does anything to detract from the original entitlement, but in fact, it does enhance it considerably. I still think there's an awful lot of density on streets where the access is a bit of a challenge, especially in today's when we're using streets that were built in the last century with ideas of land use that we're using for today's century, this century. But be that as it may, we have an entitlement, and we have an addition to it proposed that does wonderful things to it, and I'm very much in support of it.
Thank you. Commissioner Buckner?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I agree with Commissioner Altshull. I think it's this iteration of the project is so much better, and the original was really wonderful, but the work that Faring did, and particularly in listening to historic preservation and the public to increasing the size of the factory. At least it looks like the factory now instead of just a little chunk of it, and I think that is a great improvement, and I like the way it's incorporated. I like the idea of, as Genevieve, I've always wondered why we didn't have a large ballroom to attract large events here in the city, since we have so much going on in our city and everybody wants to be here. I think that the open space, which can always be divided by temporary structures and so forth for different kinds of events, I think is a great improvement. I like the edges of the hotel, which have now windows, which means that there's going to be corner rooms and great views. I think that's great for whoever gets to spend time there, I think is wonderful. I also think the changes that I like the idea of all of the parking being by valet, because I think that means just more jobs. And one of the best things about this project, it's going to bring jobs into the city and for people that live in the city or nearby. So I think that's great. So I'm in favor of that. One thing that I just thought of that I hadn't really considered is we have the motor court for the drop-offs for the cars, but have you considered how you're going to accommodate just not the valet, but Lyft and Uber vehicles coming and just dropping people off? Is that something that's part of the plan?
Yeah,
I'm sorry to bring this up at this point, but I just thought of it.
I can answer, and then okay. So yeah, we have looked into that. It was part of the original plan, and then also there will be extensive drop-off along Robertson, and also on Lapeer.
So there's special places where they can, cutouts where they can go in, drop people off safely
where
and leave.
parking is restricted, and it's curbside drop-off and pickup for Lyft and Uber and other car share.
So all in all, I was in favor of the original building. I like the design. As you know, I had some objections to the last design, but I'm very, very much in favor of this current design, and I'm looking forward to seeing it breaking ground and seeing it all happen. So I think it's amazing, and I want to thank Faring for listening to public and to comments from design review, from staff, and just working really hard to make it even better project. So thank you very much. I'm going to support it. I'd like to make a motion, but I don't want to interrupt anybody's opportunity to speak up.
Commissioner Bass?
I have a few thoughts. The first one is I served for 2 years on the Public Facilities Commission with Victor Omelchenko, and for him not to speak on an item is, I just want to note that. I was quite surprised. I heard your position slip, but I look forward to hearing from Victor Omelchenko, so I missed that opportunity tonight. But that being said, I supported this project previously, and as I looked at the plan in front of us tonight, I really love that the ballroom space. I'm going to repeat what Commissioner Altshuler and Commissioner Buckner have said to some degree, but the increase in the ballroom space, I really was disturbed with how it was divided before, but felt like that it still was better than what we have now, and so supported it. But I think one contiguous space is very beneficial to the community. I'm quite excited that the preservation of the factory is going to be more extensive, and I'm going to agree with Mr. Sam Borelli in this, and show my cards, and that was I didn't really necessarily think this building was worth saving when it was the first conversations were happening, and I'm willing to admit when I was wrong, and I have been convinced that I was wrong about that, and I'm grateful that others had the foresight before it came to me, and I think what they've done is fantastic. When Jennifer from One Archive stands up here and speaks more eloquently than I can about that, I was moved. So I supported it before in the last presentation. I had already been convinced, but more so tonight. I'm really excited about the corner units wrapping around onto Santa Monica. I think that will impact any future development that happens on the lot north of there, which I think is beneficial, so we don't set up the expectation that there's going to be maybe a 9-foot wall next to that, next to the sidewalk on Santa Monica Boulevard, and I think that they will be better units. There's been some discussion up here about the size of the gym increasing, and maybe some dancing around the idea that there might be one particular operator. I'm going to take the developer at his word that one has not been selected. I'm certainly not quiet about keeping my opinion about business operators in the city, and will share that if one is selected that I don't like. That being said, I think that having a larger gym is something that actually makes sense here in West Hollywood, in that we have more gyms per capita than any other place, as far as I understand. So So I think it's actually probably going to be a selling point for this hotel. And people who come here for a lot of our events are going to want to be in the gym before they go out to the Pride Parade or Halloween Parade or something like that. So, or to the bars on a Friday night. So I do think that that's going to be important for a hotel, regardless of the operator. And I hope it's a good one. But that's not before us tonight. So ultimately, it comes down to what Scott Schmidt said, and that is this a better project before us tonight than the one we approved last time? And the answer is resoundingly yes, and so I'll be supporting this.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoopengarter?
I, too, very much appreciate the window wraps on Santa Monica and eliminating that solid wall. I think that goes a long way to improving this project. Like Commissioner Caballero, I love me a green wall, but I do have concerns about it being maintained and not becoming this pockmarked dead space. It's going to take some work. Don't kid yourself. That's a lot of work. But you pull it off and it could be a stunning, stunning addition to the space. Ballrooms, 30 years ago when I was trying to put on events in this town, I had to go out of town to put on events because there was no ballroom. So I think that is a good addition to this space. I don't love the parking. I have grave concerns about having lifts blocked by valet cars with absolutely no room to move those cars within the space. I'm sure someone's maybe come up with a computer plan that figures it out, but you got to communicate that to the 60 guys you're going to have managing all 700 cars in a big event, and I'm very concerned that that becomes a nightmare. And that then defeats the purpose of a beautiful ballroom if people no longer want to come because they've got to wait 20, 30 minutes to get their car. So I encourage you to seriously think about making sure that that works effectively. I don't love the removal of the light from the Paseo. I understand the removal of the seating from a large chunk of the Paseo thanks to the fire code, but the whole point of that was to make it activate the public space, and the new 3-story building on the south side is cutting out all that light that was cascading in through those pergolas and through those vines, and it's creating a tunnel effect. And I also don't love the removal of the porte cochere on the west side. I think it makes the building, it does not improve the building overall in terms of its aesthetic. It now becomes just another high-rise, in my opinion. I'm like to believe that this basket weave is going to work out. I'm not seeing it in the plans, but it is, to me, a critical design element in terms of making this a unique building. And I'll leave it to staff to figure out, how to make that effectively what comes out when we get done. I understand that there's structural issues. I am concerned that this body was submitted essentially on what are we now being told are unconstructable plans. And we did approvals. Now I understand that as you get into it, things change, but that's some pretty significant changes that should have been surfaced before they came to this body, in my opinion, because they so fundamentally changed the design of the building. And yes, I think my biggest concern about this is that while there are a number of elements that are greatly improved, I don't like the effective deactivating of the public space, that there aren't more ground floor restaurant spaces, that there's a solid wall on Robertson that isn't anticipated to be anything more than showrooms and retails. You've got across the street all this wonderful open space at the Abbey and all of the interesting buildings and retail spaces across the street. And this, yay, we're saving the factory, more of it, that's great, but I'm concerned that we're creating this solid glass wall along that space, and it's not inviting people to participate in it. And to move into the Paseo and have a seat and to be the public space that was always talked about. That said, I haven't made up my mind.
Commissioner Erickson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank all the members of the public who came out, all who which spoke in favor. So I think that's very telling of, I think, the good work that the developer has done for this project specifically. I'm going to tell a little story, but it has a point, I hope, because I'm doing it on the fly. However, I staffed the Lesbian and Gay Advisory Board when I worked at the City of West Hollywood, and co-chair Ivy Bottini was at that point there. Kate Edgert, I think, had just gotten sworn in, and she was on the LGAB. And Ivy talked about needing to save the factory. It didn't seem like it was LGAB business because of the ways in which our advisory boards and commissions are structured. However, she really started a campaign with Kate and her wife Chrissy, who had already been really involved in the issue, and there had already been a community effort because I believe there was a long-term process of community engagement around the issue and the importance of the factory to gay and lesbian history and really its role in West Hollywood, and I think the larger Los Angeles LGBT movement to begin with. And so this really goes into the understanding of, I think, about what the documentaries and the producers and all the people who spoke here who really, you know, strike a chord within people's heartstrings about the friends they found, the friends they lost, and the friends that they wish were here maybe at this moment or when this historical aspect is completed. My dissertation is on American religious history, specifically gay and lesbian history, and because I'm doing it into a book and blah, 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 I was going over my interview transcripts a couple weeks ago, and one of my interviewees, Reverend Troy Perry, had talked about the Studio One and how he had come and the ways in which this area just served for the larger tradition of really making up what's special about this town, what's special about our community, and what's special to, I think, the larger LGBT community as a whole. It's really telling as well that Jennifer is here because I do believe that Ms. Bottini's records are being stored at the One Archives. So I believe in circumstance. I believe in maybe a greater calling in some ways, but I don't know. Maybe that's my metaphysical side coming out in some way. Call me Marianne Williamson. Maybe not. Maybe so. However, I say that name because she too partook in many things about the history of this town. And so when I say that Faring has done a good job making sure that the history of this town and this building has been taken into consideration. I say that as a doctorate in this field, and I say that as a community member, and I say that as a planning commissioner looking at the ways in which now we have quite a significant amount increased, 79% of the area and 91% of the length being restored in this modified project. More specifically, I think as Scott Schmidt said, if you don't get it right the first time, come back a second time and well, I guess here we are, right? But I think perfection takes time, and what we really do see here before us with some quirks and some issues here and there, and I don't think Faring would make sure an individual like Mr. Ross would be welcome in one of his projects, especially at a time when the diligence went into the LGBT history of this project. It would be a sad rewriting of that history if that were to be the case, but I trust the work that Faring has done, the work that we have seen in the past, and the work that we'll probably see in the future. I am inclined to support this project. It is, in many ways, I was not here the first time it came around, so seeing it with those fresh eyes, but seeing it with the ways in which it's come before us now, I'm very proud to support this project. I think that it is elegant. I think that it has been carefully done. And I think that it does talk about West Hollywood. And when you think about the jewels of future architecture and spaces to come in West Hollywood, somebody mentioned the PDC, and people come from all over to see the PDC. Well, I think we're looking at a new way in which Robertson Lane and the areas in this part of town are going to become those new parts of which people come to photograph, to stay in, and to join in community. And if Genevieve Morrill is happy, well, then we're all happy. However, with that being said, I want to commend the developer. I want to commend the people that came out and spoke tonight. And I want to also say thank you to those individuals who spoke with such heart about the why this was important, because it needs to be said and it needs to be put on record. And so I am inclined to support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Caballero?
Thank you, Commissioner Erickson. That was amazing. So I handed Faring 4 pages of design notes at design review, and I want to congratulate them for addressing every single item that I had on those 4 pages. I think this project has dramatically improved. When we were handed the current staff report and the current package of drawings, I had the old one from a year ago next to it, and I was looking at it page by page. I didn't see one moment where it hasn't been an improvement. So I think in the end, it's a win-win. I also understand that there's still evolution to this project to come. Those activation of street-level spaces will happen as you find tenants, and you can modify and adjust to accommodate those tenants. So it's not like, I think that there will be that activation in time. I think to possibly predict that at this point is impossible, but I understand that is everyone's intent, and I get that that's where we all want to go as a city, and I see that as your commitment to the Paseo, that activation is something that's meaningful to everyone. And you know that it's meaningful to us, you know that it's meaningful to the public, they've all made comment about it. So just so that's said, the green wall thing, I mean, I love them, they're beautiful. There's an amazing one in Long Beach that has done pretty well. I just ask that 30, 40 years from now, if this goes out of style, that maybe we could consider an art component to replace it as part of Arts and Cultural Affairs. We had talked about that briefly last time when we approved the project as a component that we could consider. So the green wall's great, but let's just have a backup plan in our mind in case for whatever reason it doesn't succeed. In regards to the gym, I'm a gym goer. In hotels that have crappy gyms, I don't work out, I seek a gym somewhere else. But in hotels that do have great gyms, I do use them. And I know it's part of our culture and it's part of West Hollywood. And I don't see that as like a bait and switch type of thing. So I think that's a good thing. I love the fact that the factory building is closer to its original proportions. Its position in the site it just feels more meaningful than it did before. It felt very diminutive before, especially when I was looking at it from before to now. I think that's a great, great win. I will be supporting this project.
Thank you. I don't have a ton to add here. I would like to echo Commissioner Hubengarner's comments about the activation of the pedestrian engagement in the space along Robertson. I do wish that it was, I wish that there were more entrances or ways to activate that space, especially given the amount of activity on Robertson. But it's not really a condition for criteria for what's before us tonight, but I wanted to state that for the record. I also wanted to say that I'm absolutely not worried about the parking. Anyone who's been to an event at the Beverly Hilton or been to CAA when everyone's leaving, I know that sounds very snooty, but you will wait, or I forget the name of the hotel, it's under construction right now, right across from CAA actually. You can wait 20 to 30 minutes for your car. And people who don't want to, just Lyft or ride share. So we sent a man to the moon. I'm not terribly concerned that we won't be able to, figure out the parking situation there, however frustrating or inconvenient. We live in LA. We live in our cars. We live waiting for our cars. we wait when we get out of them. It's living in the city. I'm not worried about that. I also think I hope it goes without saying that I'm in full support of the revisions to the factory building. What's not to like more than what we originally approved. My only question, I do intend to support the project. My only question for staff is that given the specific plan, Jennifer, is there the potential for us to condition this such that if there are significant design changes, it would come back to us, or is that already written into?
That's why we're here. So
Okay.
if there are significant design changes, we would consider it a major amendment and we would bring it back just like we have tonight.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's stated for the record because there have been changes made, so.
Absolutely.
Okay, it sounds like, I believe Commissioner Buckner had a motion, but Commissioner Caballero, do you want to state your motion? I have this feeling that they're probably the same, so.
Okay, go ahead.
I make a motion to approve this project as presented in the staff report.
And to adopt the resolution as is stated in the staff report.
And we have a second from,
I'll second it.
well, no, you won't, because Commissioner Erickson already did.
I lost.
All right, with that, unless there's further discussion, let's call the
Man, who
question.
cares?
What's your vote no?
And the motion passes unanimously. The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees.
Thank you. We've had a request for a quick break. We're going to convene back here in 5 minutes. Please don't take longer than that. Thank you.
What are you taking next?
11B.
B.
With that, we'll move into our second public hearing. This is item 11B, 1138 to 1144 North Detroit Street, and I will pass this over to staff for their presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Derek Purification, Associate Planner, City of West Hollywood. Before I start on my presentation, in front of you, you'll probably see a window schedule and door schedule. At the time of the packet being put together, I realized that those were missing. They were part of the packet, throughout the whole process. This version ended up missing, so they are before you, and they should match with the rest of the plans. So the project that I'll be presenting is a 10-unit multifamily condominium project located at 1138 to 1144 Detroit Street. A little bit of background. The property is located in a R3C zone, which is medium density multifamily. It allows for one dwelling unit for every 1,210 square feet of lot area, and it allows for 4 stories and 45 feet in height. Here's an overhead view of the surrounding neighborhood. Lexington to the north, Santa Monica to the south, La Brea to the east, and the property is on the east side of Detroit Street. It's surrounded by single-family, multifamily, as well as mixed use and McDonald's, so a restaurant. And existing heights are between 1 story and up to 6 stories along Santa Monica Boulevard. Here you can see the 2 existing lots. They are 2 lots that will eventually be merged together for the development. On 1138 Detroit, or actually technically on both lots, they're both developed currently with a duplex and a single-family residence. On 1138 Detroit, there is a detached shed. All of these buildings will be demolished or proposed to be demolished, and all of the buildings have been determined not to be historically significant. Okay, sure, no problem. The proposed project can be seen here. This is the front elevation, or I'm sorry, west elevation. The proposed project is 10-unit market rate condos. They will be paying the in-lieu fee for affordable housing, and there will be a total of 4 net new units. There are 6 existing, and they are building 10, so therefore 4 net new units. It will be 4 stories or 45 feet in height. They will provide 20 parking spaces for the residents, 2 per unit, as well as 3 guest parking spaces in the rear. It will be a high-achieving green building where they will be distributing 500 square feet of common open space and distribute them to each of the 10 units. On this next slide is the proposed site plan. The front setback is going to be 15 feet and 5 inches, and the second floor and above will be set back an additional 6 feet. Side setbacks will be set back at 7 feet on both the north and the south, north and south sides, and the rear will be 15 feet. The layout consists of 2 separate buildings with a common driveway in the middle, which lead to each of the garages as well as the guest parking spaces, and all the parking will be parked at grade. The ground floor, here you can see it consists of the garages, so it's going to be 2-car garage for each unit, as well as laundry facilities, overhead storage in each garage for each unit, as well as habitable space for the 2 front units, which are units 101 and 106. It'll have a private entry on the front as required by code. For each additional units following, all their entrances are along the north and the south setbacks. On the second floor, these are basically the common spaces, kitchen, dining, living room, and you can see that both buildings essentially are mirror images of each other. So, you'll have garages on the first floor, common on the second, on the third floor, you'll have 2 bedrooms, each with 2 bathrooms. And on the fourth floor, you'll have the master bathroom, master bedroom, as well as the roof deck. On the roof plan, you can see that there are condensing units. All mechanical equipment will be relocated on the rooftop. They will be screened from public view. There will be solar panel locations on top, and it looks kind of weird, but the rectangular spaces that you see is basically the open trellis, so that you'll be able to see on the renderings.
Derek, I don't want to interrupt your presentation, but it's saying 1223 Hayworth Avenue.
Oh.
We are indeed looking at the rooftop plans for,
Sorry, yeah, that was a carryover. I
For
thought
Detroit,
I fixed
right?
that. I'm sorry, yeah, it should be 1138 to
okay,
1144.
I just want to make sure it's not transposed.
Yeah, sorry about that. Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, that's from my template. Going further, as far as the landscape, the entire project will be landscaped. They'll provide permeability as well throughout the site, according to code. The applicant, or the architect will be here. He can go a little bit into more detail about that. And here I'll be going through some of the renderings. Some of the key materials that you'll find throughout each elevation include smooth stucco, fiber cement board, as well as black anodized aluminum windows. Here you can see that the front entrances to units 101 and 106, private entrances on the front, as well as habitable space. You can see the open trellises that I mentioned from the 4th floor. Here you can see a good angle of those, as well as front yard paving. So front yard paving will have a maximum of 41.5% on front. I think the rendering is a little misleading, but they will comply with the maximum amount of 45% pavable. They will have 41.5%. Again, this is the front or side rendering. Here you can see separation of each unit vertically. You can also see the celebration of each entrance on the front as well as on the sides. This is the proposed rear elevation. Here you can see the guest parking spaces. There will be 3 guest parking spaces, the trash enclosure, as well as bike parking. And lastly, here is just one of the renderings for the interior. The other side is essentially, a mirror image of the same thing. Again, you can see that there are garages on the 1st floor, and then above that are the rest of the floors for each additional unit. They're vertically separated, landscaping in between each unit, and roof decks on top. So in conclusion, the proposed project will provide net of 40 new units that will, 4 net new units to the city's housing stock and new development that's designed well. It incorporates sustainable design principles for high-achieving green building, and it also complies with all the goals and provisions of the general plan and municipal code. So staff does recommend approval of the proposed project subject to the conditions of approval in the attached resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Does anyone on commission have questions for staff about the staff report or the presentation? Commissioner Buckner?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
So these are 2 separate lots, right?
Correct.
But it's one project. Are they joining the lots? Because it looks like it's just two separate projects, even though they're mirroring each other.
Yeah, visually it looks like they're 2 separate projects, but it will be merged together. So those 2 lots will be put together. They will be merged.
So it'll be one whole.
It will be, correct, that's correct. It will be one whole project.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Erickson?
Yeah, in regards to the neighborhood meeting, you said several neighbors attended. In previous staff reports, you usually describe what those neighbors' commentary was, but there isn't in here. I was wondering if you know or could elaborate further.
Sure, yeah, there were actually a couple who attended. Most of the concern had to do with the vacant property and transients. As you all know, East Side is very heavy with a lot of transients, so it had to do with a lot of how can we secure the property, and that was pretty much it. I think that was kind of like the major comment that we had during the neighborhood meeting.
Why, I guess this is maybe a question for the applicant, but I'll save it for that, sorry.
If in doubt, wait it out.
Yeah.
Excuse me, can I have one more question? So the tenants that were there.
Correct.
Before, I think this was 2015, I think was when it got vacated, if I remember. So they were all Ellis'd out, or?
The property has been Ellis, that's correct.
So everybody's gone, and they've all been taken care of by?
Right,
Okay.
that's correct. They have been Ellis.
Okay, and then what has since the neighbors were concerned about the transients and the maintenance of the space, the lots, have they been cleaned up while they're waiting to break ground and?
Yes, as far as I know, I think the property has been secured. I haven't heard anything from code compliance or from the sheriff's office, so I believe it's been secured
That's been
since then.
attended to as well. Thank you, Derek.
Commissioner Erickson?
I remembered. Where the one-story duplex and so the existing development includes a one-story duplex at the front and one single-family home on 113 at Detroit, and then at 1144 Detroit, a two-story duplex and a one-story single-family home. I'm guessing the single-family home and the one-story single-family home were not rented out, but in regards to the one-story and the two-story duplexes, were those rental units or were they owned? I guess I'm wondering because we're seeing a lot be transferred into more condos. I don't think the city needs more condos. I think we need more affordable housing, and they're choosing to pay an in lieu fee instead of providing an affordable housing unit. And I want to know if the history of those projects included them being on the rental market versus being owned. And I don't know if you have that history.
I believe the entire property, or all units there, were being rented.
Great, so you have all these units that were going for rentals and now going into 10 high-class condominiums.
That's correct.
Thank you.
I'd like to clarify with the applicant once they present or after they present regarding intentionality, because the application for a tract map doesn't necessarily mean that the units could not be rented, correct? As apartments.
That's correct. They can still be rented out. Under the Ellis contract, if they are to be rented out within 5 years, then all those units will be subject to rent control.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Oh,
I do.
So, sorry.
let's ask the applicant.
Well, I guess it's for staff, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So they Ellis'd the individuals that lived in these properties prior out?
Correct. All the units have been Ellis'd.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff at this time?
I just have one. On condition 10.6 on page 17 of our staff report, I usually, if I notice something that is typographical in error, I always try to let you know in advance, but I noticed this since after arriving tonight. It says parking permit district number 10. I live in district number 10, so I think that's incorrect.
It should be District 8. You're correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, that's a typo, and we can get that corrected right away.
Any questions for staff? No? All right, with that, we will move before the presentation. We need to do disclosures, if there are any. I'll start with you, Commissioner Buckner.
I have none.
I have none.
I have none.
I have none.
I drove by the space.
None.
Great, and with that, we will call the applicant up to the podium to present. Again, as a matter of course, for the public record, please state your name and city of residence. You will have 10 minutes to present.
Derek, would you mind being on just the front rendering? Okay. I'll keep it pretty brief. I'm just going to kind of present my the design intent behind here. I have to say, the developer, unfortunately, is not here tonight.
You speak into the microphone just a little more. Sorry, it's okay.
Yeah, the developer's not here tonight, so when it comes to a lot of the questions that I think that that Commissioner Erickson might ask or other people, I don't know that I'll necessarily be able to answer those questions, okay? So I apologize for that. I'll do my best, okay? But in terms of the design, when it was presented, when the project first came across to me, It was presented by the developer as this is going to be a 10-unit condo building, and they want to do tuck-under parking and townhome-style units. So my approach to the design in this case was it's really about trying to find a balance between the project as a whole, like, you know, reading the building the two separate buildings as like a single mass, but also trying to modulate that and establish kind of a rhythm of individual units. And that was really the driving force behind the massing of the project. I also wanted to introduce variation in the roof plane, so that's why you see, you know, angled roof versus flat roof, and trying to establish that rhythm. And then at the entry side, trying to kind of tie the two buildings together with a singular entry gate element, you know, develop that balance between it being a project as a whole and individual units. The materials, the one thing I want to point out, and I've got a sample here in case you want to see it up close, is the fiber cement that we're using. The fiber cement panels that we're using on the facade is an equitone that has vertical kind of ribs in it so that there'll be shadow lines. So again, I'm trying to break down the mass, make sure that it doesn't appear to be like a monolithic element. It has shadows and a texture to it. The landscape architect is here. If you have specific landscape questions, you know, if she wants to present, I can cede the rest of my time to her or something like that. But other than that, I mean, that's really, you know, what I have to say about the design. I'm trying to keep it as simple and abstract as possible. I worked very closely with Gwyn, had many, many meetings with him where we refined the design quite a bit, and that's about it.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the architect at this time? Commissioner Erickson? I'm going to let Commissioner Erickson, then you. That's okay. Well, you're next.
I don't know if the lot tie affidavit's been filed yet. I don't know. I think the intent is that we're trying to get through this stage of it, and then once we submit for plan check and so on, then that's when we're going to take care of that. But I don't know. I apologize.
Can staff comment on that?
We have the lot tie application, but it has not been processed yet.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Erickson?
Why is the developer not here?
I don't, Derek, do you know why Stefan's not here? I don't know what's going on there. Oh, okay.
He's getting married?
He's getting married, yeah.
Well, bad time to get married. All I'm saying is that, like,
Sure.
I don't know.
It's a big deal.
I guess I want to know the intent behind the project, because I feel like I'm being sold a bill of goods, especially when you Ellis out some single family, well, just units in general, and now you're proposing 10 condominiums that, if I look at the design, I'm really not too impressed with, and I don't know if the questions are being answered from staff, or it seems like a process is being put in place, but the horses aren't really there to carry the cart forward. I feel like the process is maybe pushed ahead a little too far. I don't know. I think when you have a project like this and there are questions, I mean, I just would recommend that the developer come. I don't know if legally I can actually turn down this project. However, I'm disappointed. And I do have a problem with creating 10 more condominiums on a site where we probably could have more affordable housing. If you actually know this area, you have 2 West Hollywood Housing Corporation buildings on La Brea, and then on Detroit, the Blue Hibiscus project are right there, and then you have right below McDonald's, whatever that building's name is now called, with affordable rents that are already too high. I'm just saying that I just think that in this area, luxury condominiums are not exactly what we need. However, I just wish your developer would be here, because I actually have specific questions and you're going to answer, I don't know, and that's not on you. That's totally fine. I'm sure you're a stand-up guy. However, it's bad form.
No, I totally understand.
I want to take a shot at asking some of those specific
for it.
questions.
So again, let's please limit this to questions,
I just
not
wanna ask-
deliberation or commentary. Go ahead, Commissioner Bass.
You suggested that you were told when you took on this project that it was 10 condos.
Yes.
This lot allows for 11 units if you don't, without taking any bonuses or concessions or anything like that. So you could do 11. We also have a maximum unit size of 1,500 square feet, and you're at 1,498. Why 10? Why not 11? Why max out the unit size?
So the 10 is what we could fit comfortably. You know, that 11th unit, we couldn't really fit it. That was really the basis for that decision. And, you know, from a sales point of view, they wanted to, as a developer, go for the maximum amount of square footage they could get.
Thank you.
Again, I just want to make a note for the public record and for my fellow commissioners. We really try not to move into any kind of questions that might unfairly influence kind of our decision later. I also recognize that you're kind of on your own tonight.
Sure.
So thank you. I think what I'd like to do is recommend that we move into public comment unless anyone else has very specific questions about the project itself or its design. Thank you very much for being here this evening, and you'll have an opportunity to rebut after there's public comment. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. We have, looks like one public speaker, David, is that correct? Victor Omolchenko, where were you earlier? We were waiting for you. Just please state your name and city of residence.
Yes, Victor Omolchenko, longtime member, a longtime resident of the city of West Hollywood. And I did put in a position slip. Thanks for noticing, Commissioner Bass. I mean, we just discussed a wonderful project that Faring's bringing back to our city, Robertson Lane and that. But I am very concerned about this project development here on Detroit Avenue. And I really think at this point, maybe it should be tabled for further discussion. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. First, wearing my historic preservation hat, I hope you all had a chance to read the historic resource assessment that was included in your packet that was done by a group called Chen Kaplan. This was a historic resource assessment that found that the 1907 built building at 1144, that's the second building. It's been around for almost 112 years. I've gone by the site. I know Commissioner Erickson mentioned he went by the site. And if you would look at it, it does look like a very good example of the craftsman kind of homes that are fast disappearing from our landscape. Now, I know some have been designated throughout the city, but I think we should have a fair discussion, and I think the process we need to discuss is, since you have a big historic resource assessment in this report, and the staff members said it wasn't found historically significant, I bring up to you that it is potentially significant, and I wonder why our Historic Resources Commission isn't involved in a process when buildings such as this that are included in a development such as this are subject to a historic resource assessment. They may not have appeared on a previous survey, but I think this building is worthy of some more broad public discussion and not just being said that it's not historically significant. We are losing 6 rental dwelling units on both parcels, and what are we getting in return? We're being told that we're getting 10 condos. What is the price of the condo being? Well, I guess that depends on the market, but I can tell you, I don't think these are going to be affordable to a lot of people. And we're always talking about an affordable housing crisis, and oh, prices are too high. Apparently, the evictions took place in the year 2018. I want to know if we're going to look into, I know there's that new law that said there could be an up to 1-to-1 replacement of units in projects that are evicted and ellised out and demolished. And there's a state law that says you need to bring back into a development project up to a 1-for-1 replacement based on the kinds of income that the people might have. If you can't get them to tell you what the income is, there is a state formula that says how many 1-for-1 replacements would be. And I think the report would also be enhanced if we knew how much money was put into the Affordable in Lieu of Trust Fund, in that they are not putting one on site, an affordable unit, like they could. So I believe this item should be tabled for future public discussion, broader transparency.
Victor.
Yes, sir.
I believe, isn't it true that you cannot apply for historic designation once there's been an application filed for an entitlement like this?
Correct. I believe that's so. But
so the
given that we're not talking...
Let's not get into crosstalk. We can get into this when we move into deliberation.
Asking me a question. Let me answer the question.
Doesn't that make the historic argument moot?
No, it does not. We need to discuss more fully, in a transparent fashion,
You've
the
answered the
historic
question.
resource assessment.
Thank
And
you.
I'd love to hear your discussion on the historic resource assessment included in your package.
Thank you, Victor. Do we have any other public speakers, David? The applicant will have 5+ minutes for rebuttal, unless there's any, if you don't want to take it, you don't have to. Just know that we may call you up for questions. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask a question, only because I want this process to be as fair as possible for everyone who is involved, and I typically wait until last. I don't mean to speak out of turn, but my question for staff is this. Given that the developer isn't here and we don't have a yes or no answer as regards the intentionality of how he intends to use or intends to rent or sell these units, maybe that's not germane to the purposes of our consideration here tonight, in which case I would love for the city attorney to weigh in. But I do, just in the interest of being fair and transparent, I would defer to staff in terms of next best steps. It's hard to make a decision that I think we all can feel good about without having all of the answers.
I agree with you. If you think there's questions that you want to ask the applicant and he's not here to answer them, I think that's very important because you need the information that you need to make your decision. The one specific question about whether or not there'll be rentals or condos, I'm not sure is entirely germane as to whether or not you can make your findings and the Housing Accountability Act and all of those things, which I'll be happy to get into. But if there are questions about the project that you want answers to that the architect can't answer, I think everyone would understand if you needed to wait until the developer can be here.
Understood, but I also want to be clear about the criteria for our consideration here tonight, before us tonight, and whether or not we can do that without the applicant present. I think the most burning question is maybe not one that's germane to our approval or not approving this project this evening. So I'm open for discussion, but I just wanted to surface that.
Madam Chair, I have a question for staff. I heard a couple of dates for the date of evictions. I heard 2018, and then I heard 2015. What is the date of the evictions that these residents were Ellised?
2018.
So they were Ellised in 2018.
Correct.
So, and why was 2015 mentioned again?
That was me.
That was you. Okay, I'm so sorry.
I thought when I read it, it was 2000.
Okay, I got
probably
very
didn't have my
confused.
glasses
I
on.
apologize.
So I have a question for legal. Can you give us a 3-minute refresher course on the exact state law and the state of our code as relates to state law on replacements?
Yes, and that's a great question to ask. The one-for-one replacement rule is only triggered when a project is requesting a density bonus. And because this project isn't requesting a density bonus, the one-for-one rule is not triggered.
Anyone else, any questions for staff or comments about?
The historic designation is not an issue because there was no application filed prior to this application. Is that correct?
That's correct. So there was a HRA done by the applicant. It was reviewed by Chattel, who was our historic consultant, and they made the determination that the existing buildings are not historically significant.
And also, isn't it correct that the standards for condos and rentals are the same?
That's correct. And just to add, the proposed application is for, and the intent of this project is for condominiums. I don't know if there is any other additional intent behind that, if they will end up renting them later on. But the proposed project is for condominiums. They did submit.
And that is explicit.
It is, that's correct,
Okay,
yeah.
so it's not just a tract map with his apartments and then with the tract map if they wanted them to become condos later. It is with the stated purpose of wanting to sell them as condominiums.
That's correct.
Correct, okay.
But the question then is, because I remember I think our honorable chair said that if they want, you said, I believe, if they wanted to rent them as apartments, they could. So it's tract map for whatever, it's for condos. However, they can rent them until they can sell them.
Just like any other project, yeah, that's correct. They could get their subdivision for condominiums, and they could choose, or even, you know, if someone were to, say, purchase one of these condominiums, they could go ahead and rent it themselves, but under the contract of the Ellis contract, that if it is rented within the 5 years of being Ellis, it is still subject to rent stabilization.
And we're within the 5-year mark.
I'm sorry?
We're close, but like.
That's correct. It was Ellis in 2018, so it'd be
Great.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
2023.
I'm open to discussion on this. My recommendation would be that we close the public comment portion of the hearing and move forward with the deliberation and not continue this item, but again, I'm open.
My question didn't go to the rental or for sale conversation, but rather why only 10 units instead of 11? Why not add an affordable unit on site? Like, I'd really like to get to the heart of that. And I think that the developer has to be here for that. So, because as I look at it now, I do not feel like it is within the character of the neighborhood, but perhaps the developer could answer the questions that could convince me otherwise.
But I don't believe we're allowed to reject residential projects based on neighborhood compatibility. Is that correct? Based on precedent and state case law?
Right, under the Housing Accountability Act, you can only deny a residential project that meets your development standards if there's an identifiable specific impact to health or safety that can't be mitigated.
Commissioner Altschul?
However, is it possible, or is it not possible, to withhold a tentative tract map pending the lot tie?
The lot tie is taken care of with the tract map. It's all of the lot line modifications that happen with the recordation of the tract map. So it all goes together.
So that does require the lot tie.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I don't have any problem with any of these things because I believe that the developer can build a project that he wants to develop on the lot as long as he's in conformity with our codes and with state law. And I think that the reason it was designed like this was so that it wouldn't have that huge massing and that it would be townhouse type, and that's why you don't have an 11th unit, because it wouldn't fit in the design. So I don't have any problems with that. I don't think that if he wants to build condominiums and he's entitled to do it according to law, that's the developer's decision. That's my view. So I'm prepared to support this.
Commissioner Hoopengarner?
So I actually think this is kind of a nice-looking, well-balanced, articulated design. I do have a single problem with it in that staff states that it is 50% occupied space at the ground level, and we've been through this, and that's an entryway, and we went through this. State code says an entryway is not an occupied space. That is part of our code. I don't feel comfortable being inconsistent on this item. And to have enforced this item multiple times, had people come back, redesigned. In fact, we recently had a project that came back and redesigned and was quite a bit better for the effort. So while I agree with Commissioner Buckner that we have no right to deny them based on whether it's condos or apartments or et cetera, I can make a finding that, that this does not conform with our zoning ordinance as relates to front entrances. And I particularly don't feel comfortable with approving a project differently than we have approved other projects and having a double standard. And so that would be the single thing that would cause me to not vote to recommend this.
Can we respond to that quickly?
Yes.
I think on the previous projects, we were talking about a lobby space, a communal entryway to multiple units. In this case and in many other cases, we've had a smaller habitable area that is part of a unit. That was the line that we drew. It needs to be part of a private unit. It can't be a lobby or other communal space. So I believe that this does conform with the interpretation that we've talked about on a number of occasions here.
Except we went through this and we in fact discussed it with legal counsel because the building standards say it, in the building standards that defines habitable space, and habitable space is not an entryway. And there's no room here for a sofa or barely a chair. This is not a habitable space. And we can't have a double standard around, you know, well, we think it's good enough, but if the building code says it's not habitable space, and our code says it has to be habitable space, it's not habitable space, in my opinion.
Additionally, because of, I share similar concerns, but in regards to Commissioner Bass, in regards to it being up to 11, but having 10, and I know they worked in that extra square footage, the overall ways in which any type of redesign, going along with what Commissioner Hoopengartner is saying, would change the ways in which the building is designed. Because if we look at that additional space that's being used, and we know it's understanded for 10 and they're paying an in lieu fee, and we can't make that finding because of the Housing Accountability Act. However, where in which her commentary regarding the design of the project, and if the design of the project changes because of that, and we can't find it for that fact, then we can't approve the project. Well, basically what I'm saying is, like, that would cause a redesign of that use of the front lobby area that you're the habitable space issue that we're talking about. Would we have to redesign the building to conform with what the code is to make sure we're not doing a double standard?
For contiguous townhouse units, and I just want to piggyback off this because I want to make sure I'm clear, this is not a situation where it's one large building that would require 50% habitable space. These are essentially conjoined townhouse units. They're contiguous townhouse units, correct?
They are, but that doesn't exempt them from the 50% habitable space. I think our argument is that it qualifies under that. You know,
Jennifer, if we look at the plan on page A2.1, the lobby or entrance area has a laundry facility in it. It has a laundry facility in it. Each one has a laundry facility except for one that has a lift. So except for the one that has a lift, how do we define habitable? You know, someone sitting there doing laundry, that is a domestic use. You spend time. A sofa does not define habitable. There are other types of uses in a home. So would that not qualify it as a habitable space?
That's correct. That was kind of our understanding, is that it does have an entry. It is being used. There is, you know, a laundry facility there. So you will be spending time there. You'll be going in and out. It is a private entrance. It is, you know, a private space for only one unit and not like a common lobby. So that was kind of the route that we were going.
As long as it complies with state building code and we're not being inconsistent, I'm fine with that. But I was just concerned that it was an entry and a machine, and if that complies with state building code, then great. But I don't know the answer to that question.
No,
Can we?
I mean, it's how you define habitable.
Right. And it
No,
sounds like
and-
staff is defining it as habitable space.
That's correct.
That's staff's interpretation.
That's correct, yes.
Lauren, can you weigh in on that, please?
I don't have the definitions in front of me, so to look at the
Oh, I'm
actual
sorry.
language, this is the first I'm hearing of this issue. We can try and look them up. But I think what staff's saying is reasonable, that areas at the bottom of the unit that are used are habitable. Private areas.
Yep.
And it wouldn't be the same as a public entryway when you have one
Big
large
building that serves multi-units.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Commissioner Altschul?
On the floor. Oh, anyway, I move that we adopt staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
How do I?
And the motion carries, passes. Noting Commissioner Bass and Commissioner Erickson voting no.
Thank you, David. I'd also just like to make a request of staff moving forward that in instances such as this, that we're able to, that the developer, whenever possible, because I recognize a wedding is a big deal, but, and totally, Aaron, I know, I just wanted to say that for future, we'd really like the developer to be here if at all possible.
Did he not know this was the date?
He was aware of the date, but I don't think he wanted to change his wedding date.
How, I guess my question for you is how far ahead do you notice the developer and like saying on August, whatever today's meet day is?
Let's let David read the appeal process, and then we can have staff answer.
The resolutions the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees.
Thank you. Thank you. Give me a moment to collect myself here. All right. So again, as per our earlier agenda revision, we are going to be moving out of public hearings because we have two commissioners who will need to recuse due to their the proximity of their residences to the Sunset Strip. And we are going to be skipping to item 13A. This is unfinished business, 948 to 954 North San Vicente Boulevard. Lauren, can you please give just a quick blurb about what, if any, the public comment process here is like? Do we have public comment for this item?
Yes, we have public comment on every agenda item.
Okay, great,
that's
thank
before
you. I just wanted to confirm. Oh, sorry, yes, please go ahead.
All right.
It's my bad.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Antonio Castillo, Associate Planner. The item before you this evening is a request for a second one-year extension to the entitlements that were previously granted by the Commission back in September 2015. These entitlements were granted to allow the applicant to demolish 13 rental units on the site and construct a 4-story, 18-unit apartment building over subterranean parking. The project includes 3 on-site affordable units and is located at 948 through 954 San Vicente Boulevard in the within the R4B zone. The original approval granted by the Commission back in September 2015 was valid for 36 months through September of 2018. The plans were then submitted to Building and Safety for plan check in June of 2016. 1 month prior to the planning expiration date, a one-year extension of the entitlement was requested and approved at staff level. At the time, the applicant requested an extension in order to address corrections that were provided to them by the Building and Safety Division during the plan check process. Among those corrections was a requirement to obtain clearance from the LA County Fire Department. According to the applicant, they were not able to, they were not aware of the fire department's requirement to provide a fire hydrant within the public right-of-way for this development. As the water agency serving the property, the City of Beverly Hills then applied for installation of a fire hydrant, and that was approved earlier this year. The fire hydrant was then installed in early April of 2019 this year. So after the installation, fire department has now cleared the project, and the process is, the project is continuing to go through the building and safety plan check process. As such, the applicant's request for the second one-year extension is based primarily on the delays in obtaining clearances from the fire department. The conditions of approval for the project will remain the same as were included in the 2015 resolution. The project will expire next month, and one of the conditions is that the project be in substantial, there be substantial activity, demolition and construction, given that they have not received their building permits. They will not be meeting that date. The applicant has been working diligently with city staff to address all these outstanding items. And given the circumstances pertaining to the applicant's delay in obtaining the building permits and commencing construction, staff supports the second extension request. However, the municipal code requires that a second request must be considered by the Planning Commission and not by staff. The project will continue to comply with all the applicable provisions in the municipal code and will be subject to all the conditions that were adopted. If the extension request is denied, however, the applicant will be required to reapply, pay all applicable fees, and work through the approval process, including new public hearings for new entitlements. So with that, this concludes my presentation. The project architect and property owners are here in the audience and can answer some questions if you have
Thank
some.
you. At this time, do we have any questions from commissioners about the staff report or Mr. Castillo's presentation?
I just wanted to make sure it was part of this conversation. I had asked in advance about the Ellis situation. I had asked the question of Antonio in advance. Somebody who's Ellis now, they could actually end up in there for a year. Ellis allows up to a year. And so would that just necessarily, like, this extension would be expired? But can you just confirm that everyone has already been noticed and when this building will be vacant?
Yes, the property was Alist. Both properties were Alist May of this year, and according to the applicant and as confirmed with the housing division, the last tenants will be vacating by the end of this month, August 31st.
Thank you.
Commissioner Erickson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to the requirement to get the fire hydrant, that's properly spelled out in code and wherever these individuals would need to look to make sure that whatever they submit or whatever they need to do to acquire to the law is properly laid out.
Yes, the fire department has their distance requirements, and so not every development will require a fire hydrant. It depends on the proximity of this development to any existing, and if it doesn't meet that distance requirements, they're required to install one.
So it's spelled out so that way the answer that they needed to do this was in said magical book somewhere that said that this needed to be done.
That's correct.
Great. Why wasn't it done?
That the applicant, perhaps the applicant can elaborate on that, but
thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for staff? All right. So does this move like a typical hearing? Okay. So do we have any disclosures?
None.
No.
None.
Nope.
No.
No.
All right, and with that, we will move into the applicant's presentation. You'll have 10 minutes to present. Please state your name and city of residence when you come up to the podium.
David Mannheim, city of residence is Los Angeles. I apologize in advance if I repeat some of the things that have already been discussed, and I hope that I can provide some clarity as well. So First of all, thank you, Madam Chairperson, and the rest of the commission for your time. I'm here as a representative, as both one of the owners of both the properties as well as the rest of my family. We're here today to ask for our second extension for the entitlements. Our request for an additional one-year extension is primarily for two different reasons. The first being a design change, which we decided to make during our original building and safety plan check, and the second being the delays in obtaining the approvals from the fire department. The design change was a result of a decision to change our second floor of subterranean parking from a half floor to a full floor. This was done to reconfigure to accommodate better parking for both tenants and guests, ultimately removing a lot of the tandem spaces that we had in the building. We also were able to get more bike parking as well as storage for the property. We felt that this ultimately improved the property, but unfortunately, because we decided to make this change at the point when we had already started building and safety plan check, this ultimately set back our schedule there. This design change is something that we felt would add to the property and to the city, but unfortunately, again, impacted our schedule. The second factor was obtaining our approval from the LA County Fire Department. As part of the fire department's approval process, we inevitably were required to install a new fire hydrant in front of the property. I'm going to go off script here and answer your question. Basically, our understanding was there is a fire hydrant across the street that was within the required distance. The reason was the fire department then decided that they did not want to have to run hoses across San Vicente, so therefore they said that they wanted one closer on our side of the street, which I believe is not part of the code. So that was why this was a change that we were unaware of. The process for getting a new fire hydrant requires a hydraulic analysis, approval, and installation from the City of Beverly Hills Water Department, who's the water purveyor for this property. It took City of Beverly Hills Water 6 months just to do the hydraulic analysis to give us permission to install the fire hydrant. Once this was complete, it then took quite a bit of communication and coordination between the City of Beverly Hills Water and City of West Hollywood to get the hydrant installed in the exact place that was required by the fire department. So that added to the delay. The encroachment permit, as Antonio said, was issued on February 25th, and the hydrant has since been installed. After installing the hydrant, we continued to have delays from the Los Angeles County Fire Department. Understandably so, because they had to shift a lot of their available resources to dealing with the aftermath of the Woolsey fire. So it continued to delay our approvals. As Antonio said, we have since been approved by the fire department, but unfortunately the whole process basically took the better part of a year. During these various delays, our original plan check period also expired. We recently resubmitted a whole new plan check with building and safety, and have since received a couple corrections where we hope to resubmit those corrections actually next week, at which point we hope to have final stamped plans and have the ability to pull our building permit. Also, as a result of these delays, I think it was one of the questions that was asked, we also delayed our Ellis. And that was mainly to minimize the impact on our tenants. We didn't feel like it was the right thing to do to Ellis the property prior to knowing that we saw a light at the end of the tunnel. So we only Ellis the property on, I believe it was April 30th of this year, and therefore the property will be completely vacant by the end of this month. That said, we only have one tenant still left in the 13 units. So we've done our best along this whole process to work with the various representatives from the city diligently to deal with all outstanding items. It's been a steep learning curve for us. This is our first development project, so we hope you can see the effort that we've been put to try and get this project off the ground, and we just ask that you give us this additional one-year extension so that we can make this effort worthwhile for us and do the project that we had originally hoped to do. So we thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Mannheim. Do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Without engaging in commentary, please go ahead, Mr. Erickson.
Do you think you're going to need the entire year?
I hope not. I don't think so. It ultimately will depend on any continued back and forth with building and safety. But considering that we had basically gone through most of plan check before when our plan check had expired. So we had just resubmitted, but everything was already up to current code anyways. So there were just a couple fine details that have now been worked out. So we really do hope that this new submittal that we hope to do next week should be the last of it. So once that's done and the Ellis is done, there really should be nothing preventing us from breaking ground.
Your primary engagement now won't be with the City of Beverly Hills Water Department, and I understand how long that can take, so.
Yeah,
I hear that.
and we got the fire hydrant in, it's in front of the property, it's in there right now, so it's nice and yellow.
Thank you, that's all my questions.
Any other questions for the applicant? No? Thank you very much. We may call you back up and you'll have time to rebut as well. It looks like we have one public speaker, David, is that correct? Victor Omolchenko? Please state your name and city of residence. You'll have 3 minutes.
Victor Omolchenko, longtime West Hollywood resident, interested in these kinds of issues, historic preservation, rent stabilization, and unlike the previous project on Detroit, where we had 3 or 6 affordable rental units, probably with folks with low income to moderate income, and all we got for it is a little bit of money, still unknown to me, into the In Lieu of Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Here we have a project where we're going to be getting 18 units, and 3 of them will be permanently affordable. So I think that's a good deal. But I am still concerned about the changing fabric of the city, and I went by there on my bicycle, and when I read the report, the 4-page, or at least the staff report, it said that the Department of Rent Stabilization and Housing records indicated that the units on all properties are currently occupied by tenants and will be subject to removal of the property from the rental market. But we learned today that the Ellis Act eviction went out in April or May, and almost everybody is going to be gone. So I hope that due consideration is given to those folks who are being evicted, who are being Ellised out, that they, if they meet income limits, will somehow get up on the list for the affordable inclusionary housing that may be developed now as the city is developing and bringing on new projects, because that could keep some folks still in the city. I hope the process of this Ellis eviction is going calmly and nicely. What I do notice is the project was approved back in 2015, so I sometimes wonder what kind of penumbra have the residents been living under all this time, and here we're asking for another extension. And what I did learn from council was that you only have the 1-for-1. I need to be reminded, 1-for-1 replacement when a density bonus is required. But I would ask you, I couldn't tell from the 4-page report whether there is a density bonus was requested back in 2015, and would the 1-for-1 rule have been applied to that back then? And so I just bring these points up because it is a property, those 2 properties I know housed long-term West Hollywood tenants, and at a time when we see so much focus being played on affordable housing and the homelessness crisis and housing being so costly to bring in, I know we're going to have 3 affordables, but the other 15 are going to be market rate, and they're going to be very, very expensive. So thank you for looking into these issues, commissioners.
Thank you. David, do we have any more public speakers? No? If you would like to rebut, you don't have to, but I encourage you to if you want to. You will have 5 minutes plus whatever time you didn't use in your presentation for your rebuttal.
Yeah, my only response to that would be, like I said, we really did wait to Ellis the property in consideration for our tenants. And yes, we did get this project approved in 2015 originally, but I can say that we continued to lease apartments up until probably about a year ago, at which point we felt like it was unfair to starting new leases. So I would also say most of the majority of the building was just due to normal matriculation of people just moving elsewhere, moving out of state. And so it wasn't due to people being evicted. Not all of them were due to people being evicted from their homes.
Thank you.
Which we can we try and take an appreciation for.
Thank you very much. All right, well, with that, we'll close the public comment portion of the hearing and move into deliberation. Commissioner Bass?
I just want to clarify that the reason I asked about the Ellis is I was concerned if we approved 1-year extension today and then Ellis started tomorrow, that they would coincide and it wouldn't really do us any good to have the extension because they wouldn't have time to do substantial construction. So the fact, I appreciate that they didn't Ellis people back in 2015 and leave us with a vacant building. I think that that's a very responsible move, and I appreciate it. But I'm also grateful that they've started Ellis, so that if we grant this tonight, which I'm inclined to do, I think it's very straightforward, that they can actually start substantial construction and meet this deadline. Because I just don't believe in activities that are fruitless, and if they were going to coincide, that just didn't make sense to me. But because they're not, I'm prepared to support this.
Commissioner Hoopengarner? It doesn't have to be. I look for.
If no one else wants to speak, I'll move this.
Okay, now everybody wants to
All
go.
right.
Commissioner
I mean,
Caballero, go ahead.
I sympathize with your situation. I've been in this situation before, and sometimes you want the city to move faster than it does, and you just have no control of it. And I think it would be unfair of us to deny this extension and have them pay all the fees again, go through the entire process. I get it. I will support.
I think my concern was simply, in reading the staff report, get a feeling of a good faith effort. And I feel like the applicant has explained well, and I think now that I've heard that, I feel like a good faith effort has been made, and that answers my qualms about this application, so I'm definitely inclined to support it.
I'm in the same boat. In reading the staff report and in my conversations with Antonio, was not in favor of supporting the extension. I felt a 2015 building. I understand the issues. I sympathize. I wasn't there. Your answer swayed me over, and so I am inclined to support it. I think, though, that I don't speak on behalf of my fellow commissioners, but on behalf of this commissioner, build the building, and let's add those net increase of 5 housing units to the city's housing stock, including 3 inclusionary units, as soon as possible. So, and I know staff, being this done in 2015, will hopefully expedite ways in which we can get this process, especially if they're submitting next week, done quickly and expeditiously, because of the ways in which I do feel a good faith effort has been put in, and dealing with other cities, even though they're right across the street sometimes is not easy, but I would just encourage this project to be done and making sure that we increase the housing stock here. That's all I have to say.
Go ahead.
Question for staff. This is the last extension that they're allowed, correct?
That is correct.
They have to break ground.
Correct.
Great.
Commissioner Altschul?
I agree with what everybody else has said, and I will vote to grant the extension.
Sounds like we have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Buckner, do you want to comment?
Oh, I seconded the motion. I do think we should support the staff report and give this developer an opportunity to build its building. I think it's been reasonable, and I get it, and hopefully it'll get done.
1 second. Before we start voting, I would like to make a comment. So I'm also inclined to support the extension, which is actually not completely how I arrived at the meeting. I think I was a little wary of the request. I think you've done a good job explaining the reasons why, some of which are out of your control. It sounds like many of which are out of your control. And also, I voted on this project 4 years ago, as did a number of people up here with me, and I believe one of my issues with the project was the parking. So to increase that and to improve the tenant experience and guest experience, I'm all in favor of that, because it means I don't have to hear about it later. So I'm inclined to support, and with that, I think we can, we don't want to see you back here. I mean, no offense, we do, just not in this context, so we can call the question.
And the motion passes unanimously. The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees.
Thank you. So we're moving back to public hearing, item 11C, Sunset Specific Plan Amendment for billboard cleanup items. I want to note that we do have actually 3 recusals, 2 of which are because of proximity of residents, and 1 of which is because of a business interest, I believe.
A client of mine is interested in the results of this.
So we will have 3 members recusing from this item, and I don't believe you'll be returning. Will you? All right. Well, thank you. We'll miss you.
Madam Chair, there is an item that has to do with cleanup with regard to subcommittees. We're supposed to, I suppose, announce if we're not going to be able to go to a subcommittee meeting. I don't have any conflicts, so I'm announcing that I'm okay for the next couple months.
It was just it's the cleanup item. It's at the end of our agenda if you're not going to be able to make a meeting.
It's
Yeah,
at the
it is.
end.
It's item 17B. Unless there are any announcements about it, I think we can move on.
I'm okay.
Thank you. All right, we'll wait for these 3 members to leave the auditorium, and then we'll get going.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bianca, in my comments, I didn't thank you as well, so I'm sorry. I hope you didn't think that as an
Yeah, bye. Let's see, do we have everything?
Although going to the county,
Okay, we ready?
All right.
Okay.
Are we good?
Yeah, I have a very quick
All
staff
clear.
report.
All right. So I will turn this over to you, Mr. Eck, and
Okay.
we can get started.
Good evening, Chair, remaining commissioners. Brian Eck, Senior Long Range Planner. Before you is an item to clean up various recently adopted provisions related to the off-site advertising signage on Sunset Boulevard. The first piece is a technical cleanup to the recently adopted off-site advertising section of the Sunset Specific Plan, which adds clarity and removes any ambiguity to new provisions that guide the modification of existing billboards. The second piece is a zone text amendment to remove any inconsistent provisions related to the administrative procedures for the approval of a second phase to existing billboards. Comprehensive updates to the off-site advertising chapter of the Sunset Specific Plan and an associated zone text amendment was recently adopted and approved by the City Council and became effective on May 1st of this year. This is a cleanup item of those recently adopted provisions. Planning Commission recommended approval of that item originally on June 15th of 2017. Early implementation of the program is already underway, and discussion with project applicants has highlighted the need to clarify these certain provisions in order to efficiently implement the update as was intended. Thank you, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Eck or Ms. Siegel? No?
I feel like we ought to, just to give you a proper initiation.
Please. I mean, last time I was here, there were also no questions, so fire away.
Looks like we have a public comment, David? Victor Omolchenko? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, that's sorry. The screen is ahead of me. I'm not ahead of the screen, for the record. All right. Well, so I guess we can move into deliberation about this, if there is any.
No.
Thank you, John, for your astuteness on that item. That sounded mean. I didn't.
Bianca, you can't go out with a whimper.
Give us some, Bianca, give us something to take with the
I'm going to have
Sunset
some
Specific
announcements for
Amendment.
you and the manager's comments for maybe the first time ever.
What about this?
Oh, okay.
Oh.
All right. Looks like we have a motion on the floor and a second as well. Would you like to state your motion, Commissioner Erickson?
I would like to move staff's recommendation.
Don't have a tutu tie. Couldn't-
Gets late and we get slap happy here.
And the motion carries, passes, noting Commissioner Elchel, Commissioner Buckner, and Vice Chair Carvalho recused.
That's it, Bianca? That's your last item with us? Wow.
She has to give the planning
No,
manager's
she promised
update.
at long range she's going to come back with our next ZTA. I have it on the record.
I'll watch it every time on WehoTV.
All right, well, that was a short one. Item 12, new business, there is none. Item 13A, we have already done. Item 14 is excluded consent calendar, there is none. Item 15A, items from staff, our planning manager's update.
Yes, I have something for you, for those of you that are remaining. You should have already received information about transit tours that the staff who's working on the Metro Advocacy and WHAM groups is preparing. I believe several of you already registered for those this weekend. If any of you are not and would like to participate in guided transit tours that promise to be pretty interesting and fun, looking at how transit is integrated with various community types around the region, you can email dfen@weho.org. There are tours coming up this Saturday as well as August 23rd and September 21st. There's that. Appreciate that Commissioner Huppengarter mentioned Ciclavia. The long-range planning staff has been coordinating a lot of that planning effort, and we're really excited to see all of you out there this weekend, I hope.
Can you give us a rundown of like when it starts?
Yeah.
Stuff like that real quick.
Sure. The event is from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., although roads will be closed approximately 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. There's a press conference to kick off the event at 8:30 at Santa Monica and San Vicente. The City of West Hollywood has 2 hub locations, which is where there are various organizations and activities where people get off bikes and can fill up a water bottle or participate in other activities. Those are at San Vicente and Santa Monica and one near Plummer Park. We're going to have a really great 2 actually art installations at each hub, and at the Plummer Park hub, we're going to be doing drag queen story hour. It's also just going to be great. There's also a rec fair in Plummer Park that day, so there'll be some nice synergy between those events. And then the route extends all the way along Santa Monica to Highland, up Highland to Hollywood, and Hollywood over to Barnstall Park. And there are a number of additional hubs in the city of LA along the way. It should be a really great event.
If you've never done it before, it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it doesn't require a bike, so you can come and walk, Stacy.
And you can rent,
Okay,
the
I'll
city
come
has
use my
bikes.
legs. Or I'll just complain that I can't drive anywhere, it's fine.
I will be watching Victor from afar. Are you doing it, Victor?
You can in public comment. All right, well, Bianca, thank you. Wait, do you have any other items?
No, I was going to thank you all for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure to work with you.
Well, we wish you all the best. You'll be missed. Thank you. And thank you, Brian, for what might be, besides our subdivision request, the shortest presentation ever.
I would like to request that John Kehoe give Brian a really elongated staff report at some upcoming meeting to really initiate him in some way, shape, or form. So if that request could be made, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much. Great, you're welcome.
Thank you. We'll move on to public comment. We do have one public speaker, Victor Omolchenko. Please state your name and city of residence. Yes, even though you stated it before, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Jones. Victor Omolchenko, longtime West Hollywood resident, and I would just like to turn and say thank you, Bianca. Thank you, Bianca, for your service. I've known you since the last general plan was being developed, and all of your work on long-range mobility and transportation issues, and of course in community development, and I wish you the very, very best in your new position. And yes, you've been hearing this evening from commissioners and from Ms. Siegel about the Ciclavia that we are going to be having this Sunday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday, this coming Sunday. And we heard earlier in the evening when we were talking about parking and transportation about how we live in our cars. Well, now we have a chance to get out of our cars. And I've spoken with some of you commissioners in the past, and if you want to get out of your cars, this is an ideal opportunity. The streets will be closed to cars. They will be closed to all of that traffic and to all of those carbon emissions for a day that will be for bicyclists and for pedestrians. And yes, the route will be along by San Vicente and Santa Monica. It'll be all along Santa Monica Boulevard to Highland, and then you can go up on your bike Highland up to Hollywood Boulevard, and then east all the way to historic Barnstable Park, where there's a famous Frank Lloyd Wright building that is a designated landmark in Los Angeles. I and a group of my friends are going to be getting together in the Gelson's parking lot at 10 a.m. on Sunday, August 18th. So we are going to start riding soon after that, so that if anybody here or anybody still watching wants to go with a couple of people who are experienced, it's going to be totally safe. You're going to be on the street. It's a way to see the city, unlike being just stuck in car-centric Los Angeles. And as a member, as an individual member of the West Hollywood Bicycle Coalition, I'm really, really happy that the city, that Bianca Siegel and her staff and the council, that we've all looked forward and designated this a joint effort, really, with our partners in the city of Los Angeles, in the Hollywood district of LA, and here in the city of West Hollywood. So we'll have 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. available to bicyclists, pedestrians. You'll be able to walk in the middle of our boulevards, and you could go all the way to the east side, and it's something that I encourage everybody who's interested, even if you haven't been on a bike for a long time, please come out and participate for the environment, for sustainability, for alternative modes of transportation. Thank you, Chair Jones.
Appreciate it. All right, item 17 is items from commissioners. 17A is commissioner comments. Anything?
I just wanted to thank you personally for being a pleasure to work with and wish you the best in your next endeavor.
I forgot to thank, and now that the room is so full of people, the amazing job done by City of West Hollywood staff, the Public Safety Commission, our sheriffs, our fire department at National Night Out. I saw, I think, several people at all 10, I can't remember, 9 fun little community events. I usually, as per tradition, have eaten more than I can maintain. I've succeeded in this tradition again this year. Every neighborhood watch group, every year, it's like, how are they going to outdo themselves? And they always outdo themselves. And it was just so wonderful to see so many of our neighbors, so many of our fellow commissioners, and the great work done by the city staff, especially our public safety division, out like in the streets. We're talking about being in the streets and really just coming out of their apartment buildings, coming out of their houses. It was a lot of fun, and it was really nice actually this year.
Mr. Hooper-Garner, you have anything? No?
I'm good. I'm just going to say bon voyage. And you know where we are.
If you ever want to come back and visit, or come to a planning commission meeting, maybe. I want to also thank Bianca, and also want to congratulate Jennifer, whom I was remiss to congratulate earlier.
Help make sure we get that train. Okay, thanks.
Anyway, best of luck. Thank you, Bianca. Subcommittee management, I think we should be good here. I don't believe there were any cancellations or anticipations of not being able to attend, so we can cross that off. And with that, we will move into adjournment. Item 18, we will reconvene here on Thursday, September 5th at 6:30 p.m. Thank you.